Oh, shoot. I need some fresh shirts. Okay. Let's see. New arrivals. What's new? This is amazing. What?
Thank you, user. I have now injected my code into Shop TYT. Proceeds from this shirt will benefit me directly.
When you were growing up, what did you want to be?
I think I was starting to think I don't want to do one thing, and I did live up to that.
Well, mission accomplished then, because Dave was a geologist.
Yeah.
And now he's, helped found the Young Turks. Even within TYT, you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So if you want to do different things, you nailed it. All right, last story to end on is a Dave story. Whenever there was something like obvious, glaring, he would go up and ask them about it. Like, it'd be like a giant church, right? And somebody's standing in front of it. The usual Dave go, pull up right in front of them. Be like, hey, do you know where there's a church around here? And they're like, right here. It's right here.
Practical jokes. Spice up life a little.
Welcome to Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. I'm Brett Ehrlich, and this is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. The Trump administration, Trump mandated Trump, that Trump, every Trump, other Trump, word Trump, be Trump, Trump.
I'd like to introduce you to our newest partner, Doe. With Doe, you can be an owner, not just a consumer, with no fees to trade individual stocks. Doe is what investing should be. Unlimited, commission-free stock and ETF trading, zero account minimums, and an investing app filled with smart ideas. Doe is the online broker radically challenging the status quo and changing wealth creation. Features include Doe Selects, where you tell them what you're interested in, and they'll help you uncover the investment potential. The Idea Feed, which is a daily one-stop investment shop with lists of companies that relate to your personal interests, relevant news on your favorite stocks, and videos that unpack today's money-moving headlines in under 3 minutes, because we all know we're busy, right? Stock Report Card, which shows you all the professional buy and sell ratings from Wall Street analysts. Go to doe.com/TYT and download today.
Now, top. No. No.
My name is Cassandra Hanks. I've been with TYT for 3 years. I am a video editor and a photographer. A main perk for working for TYT is, as being their main photographer, I get to photograph and sometimes meet some of the celebrities that come through. Susan Sarandon was amazing because she brought her dog Penny. Tom Morello is probably my favorite because I love rock music. Meeting people like Joss Whedon and Quentin Tarantino has been some of the reasons why I got into filmmaking and photography was like a dream come true.
Got it. Okay, cool. All right. Hello and welcome to Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. It's a great day today to talk about the Green New Deal, talk about our future, to talk about the way we get out of this mess that we are in. Not just the mess of coronavirus, but the mess of all the fossil fuel pollution. As you know, and I say many times on this program, the fossil fuel industry is a global pandemic. The fossil fuel industry's pollution kills 5 to 7 million people every single year. That's a $30 trillion healthcare cost. The fossil fuel industry is a global pandemic. We are here to talk about the cure to that global pandemic, which is the Green New Deal. And today, on today's program, we have some spectacular guests. We have some incredible, organized, inspiring youth from Fridays for Future from New York City, and Triage, a new organization that they're starting. We have Azalea Danes and Shiv Soin from Triage and Fridays for Future in New York City high school and young college age adults who are just remarkably inspiring, and who I have great love for. We're having them on the program today, and we have Zoe Bookbinder, an amazing musician, singer, songwriter, to talk to us about their new project. So it's going to be a great show. But today I want to talk about organizing. Now look, I'm not an organizer, right? I can't organize a sock drawer. I don't even have a sock drawer. In fact, I'm not wearing socks right now. And I'm not going to show that to you. But the point is that without organizers, we're lost. Every time I get involved on an issue, and I'm a filmmaker, right? And I make TV, and I am out there with culture talking about this crisis all the time for the last, I don't know, my whole life. My first impulse is, well, who are the organizers? Who are organized? Who's organizing? Who are the local organizers? Who are the state organizers? Who are the national organizers? Without organizers, we don't have a movement. We don't have political clout. We don't have any way into that political infrastructure at all. Even if we elect people that we like, those organizers are the people on the front lines who will then go to those elected officials and say, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to do to get our support again. This is what you have to do to get our support, period. For disorganized people like yours truly, it is a relationship of interdependence and mutual support, because we glorify the cultural actors in this space. We glorify the celebrities who go in and they say, "Oh, I don't like this, and I don't like this," and they make a video or whatever. Sometimes those are good videos. Sometimes they're the ones where they sing Imagine. But the point is that we glorify the people out front, the politicians, the cultural makers, but the organizing is at the core of all of this. And so I always say, if you're a person who wants to interact with the movement, you have to do what you love, right? You have to, if you're a filmmaker, you have to make films. If you're a musician, you have to make music. If you're a great graphic designer, you have to make graphics. But if you're one of those people who loves to organize stuff, then you got to do that organizing. But if you're not, so you have to do what you love. But you also, in addition to that, you can't just I wrote a fracking folk song, so I'm like, everybody loves me. I did my part. No, that's not enough. You have to do things in two camps. Number one, the thing that makes you who you are, the thing that makes you that precious, creative, unique, different person in the universe. That's what you love to do. You add that to the movement. But then you just got to be a foot soldier. You got to show up and do the thing that makes you not special. Do the thing that makes you just like an anonymous face in the crowd, because that crowd is what we need. When we go and we say we're going to have a protest, when we say we're going to do civil disobedience on this day, when we say we're going to vote, when we say we're going to petition, you have to do those things too. You have to do the thing that makes you unique and the thing that you love, and then you have to do the thing that makes you not unique, the thing that makes you just like everybody else. That's how we build power. And it is the organizers at the bottom of all of this, not the bottom, the top, the middle, the bottom, everywhere throughout the whole system. The ecosystem of activism does not work without organizers. They are the oxygen, they are the photosynthesis, they are the backbone. So today we celebrate organizing, and we celebrate it by having organizers on the program who are both brilliant and inspiring. I think, lift you up. So here we go. All right, my guests are Azalea Danes and Shiv Soin, and they are from Triage in New York City, which is a new organization that they have formed, as well as Fridays for Future. We started to know each other when they did a talk back session with me, at least Azalea did, after my show, The Truth Has Changed in New York City, and they're doing incredible work organizing in the epicenter of the coronavirus. So please introduce yourselves and your titles with this new organization and how you fit into this ecosystem of activism right now.
Do you want to go first?
Azalea, you go first.
Okay. I have to say first that I cannot take any credit for founding Triage. That was all Shiv and Anna and some of our other team members, but I've been very happy to join on as the communications director. So I do a lot of the messaging and branding work for Triage and all of the various actions that we do surrounding climate justice and political endorsement in New York City. I'm 17 and I'm still a senior in high school almost. In 3 weeks I won't be anymore, but yeah.
Woohoo! Get there.
I'm Shiv. I'm 19 years old. I'm now a second year student. Well, not third year student. I just finished my second year at NYU. And I'm the executive director of Triage. So my portfolio kind of looks more around the strategic end of all of this, like building up the apparatuses that actually build up community power, being able to bring people in so that they can actually effectively use their voice in their communities. So that's really what we're just all about doing. And that's my role, just like bringing people into the table and facilitating their voices and utilizing them to actually create the change that we want.
So triage is this wonderful pun and double entendre. It's tree and age together, which I find wonderful. Talk about the principles and the objectives of the organization and what you guys are up to now and how you got started. I mean, I remember this remarkable climate march in New York City with Greta Thunberg and all of this unbelievable youthful energy, organizing, feeling like it was one of the best rallies I've ever been to in my life. Right? It had because young people were there, and the diversity was there because New York City decided to let public schools out for the day to participate in this climate march, which was so huge, right? So you had the most diverse protest I've ever been to, the youngest protest I've ever been to, and the most enthusiastic and least jaded, the least like, because activists, you know, when you get to be a couple decades into it, you go to the protest and you're like, okay, another protest. But this was like, I'm not saying you shouldn't keep going. You have to keep going. It's all about protest. My banjo teacher, Roger Sprung, once looked at me and he goes, "You're not one of those protest people, are you?" And I said,
well,
yeah, I am. But the point is that this was a remarkable thing. What was the original? Tell me the principles of the organization and what was the inspiration and how are you, what are your objectives right now?
Yeah. So Azalea, I can kind of go over how we got started and if you want to take on the principles. Yeah. So, I mean, what we really began with is what you were talking about with like the September climate strikes, the youth climate movement as a whole. And it was so much energy. We really, at that time, got young people really excited, starting to understand what the severity of the climate crisis was and how it was really impacting them. That was the biggest things that we realized from September and from the previous strikes that we held. And yeah, that was really evidence in the fact that we had around 315,000 people show up on September 20th in New York City alone and around 7 million worldwide. What we started to realize though was the strike that happened on September 20th and the strikes that were happening with the youth climate movement generally had demands like 100% renewable energy, accountability, these like really nice terms that didn't necessarily have meaning to the people that were viewing it. So it was a really great way for our elected officials to get to pretend like they understood what we were talking about, to get the credit, to get the publicity without actually doing anything. And that's what really bothered us. And we knew kind of going into it that like, okay, this is going to be a problem, but we never really pivoted to such a strong strategy like we are now. That is, okay, we know the language that we're using. How do we actually hold these electeds accountable? So that's what we're starting to do. And that was what we learned from the youth climate strikes.
And basically, we realized that we had all of this catalyzation from the year's worth of striking that we had built up. And we reached a point where there was all of this massive youthful energy, like you said, Josh. And we recognized that there was a need for more. Like the next step was something that had to be more specific and more political and locally driven, because we realized that so much of the electorate and the youth voice and the youth climate activists around the country were tired and jaded of the federal politics and like kind of Green New Deal messaging that had sprung up. And so we decided that it was really important to focus on specific local action that we can measure as we continue to endorse people throughout the year. So most of our principles center around this idea of like real community-based organizing. So we want to make sure that our triage like organizing team is representative of the 5 boroughs of New York City and is completely youth-led and really just tries to achieve all of the demands that we have come up with in a year's worth of striking, and doing it specifically and tangibly and effectively.
Okay. You're watching Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal and why we're not going back. And evidence of why we're not going back is with me right now, the incredible youth-led organization Triage. Now, you're in New York City now. Do you have a template for expanding that? Are you looking out at outreach? And what are some of the specific local objectives in New York City right now? Because like, if you can like create 100% renewable energy in New York City, you could do it anywhere, right? New York City is got a lot of pluses, but it also has a lot of real challenges built into the landscape of the city. Talk a little bit about local objectives and how those could apply outside of your local reach.
So in terms of our local objectives, and in the first question that you brought up about scaling things up, the really big messaging that we're really working on right now is building up this community-based model of organizing. We are reaching out to people and giving them tools and methods that we're kind of experimenting, but at the same time, we're learning from people around us, people across the country who have used tactics that have elevated the voices of their community to really see legislation passing. This isn't an effort that Azalea, me, or our team created out of the blue. This is something that is being built upon thousands of years of history of people actively trying to get these methods working. So we're really working within the ecosystem that's existing already in terms of the overarching youth and environmental movement. In terms of what we're doing specifically, we are starting out with 2 main demands, and we're releasing one in a little bit of time once kind of things cool down with the current situation that's happening right now. But our first demand is just simply youth representation in these decisions. So we want to be able to get young people into the framework of what's happening with climate decisions, whether that's in the mayor's office, city council, any of these action councils, boards. There's so many different inner mechanics and all these things that are happening in New York City, yet young people don't really have a stable voice in any of them. And when we do, it's generally media heavy, press related, nothing really policy related, not a back and forth, is something that we're noticing quite a lot and that we really want to shift. So we kept our first demand around that. And the second demand that we're looking at is very much specific to what we're looking at right now in terms of our global landscape in regards to COVID-19. New York City, as we all know, has been really hit the heaviest by this pandemic. And we have the highest death rate in the country. We're seeing millions of job losses. There's so much hurt that's happening in New York City right now. So our second demand is really a green stimulus that will help us out of this. This isn't a plan that we've developed on our own. This is something that we've worked with a lot of labor organizations, faith organizations. We've built this coalition. We've worked with this coalition that is with a lot of adult organizations and other organizations. We've all come together in New York City to say, this is an issue. This is what we're looking at right now. Millions of people are hurting. We need to put policies that put working people first. And we can do this through an environmentally sustainable plan that has labor backing it, that has faith groups backing it, that has young people, that has adults, that has everyone in between. That's really what we're working on right now, prioritizing these 2 demands and making sure that we get out of this crisis okay. Because right now, the way that Andrew Cuomo, the way that Mayor de Blasio are going, it's not okay. We've had to battle bit by bit to see what we can kind of extract as like working people, as like normal people in the state. But I think it's enough is enough now. We need to start fighting. And that's really what we're organizing around.
Are you organizing in high schools?
So that's a model that we're working really closely with, is our age demographics. As you can see, Azalea is 17, she's in high school. I'm now a junior in college. We're working really closely with this age range of high schoolers and college students and a little bit of postgrad as well, so that we're really invigorating and energizing and mobilizing Gen Z is really what we're focusing on.
I see. Azalea?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to Shiv something you said earlier about how Cuomo and de Blasio are really not hitting the bill. What we realized was with the climate strikes that have been happening for so long, and in the beginning of this year, there were a lot of policy changes and promises that were made by politicians like Chuck Schumer, like Cuomo, like de Blasio, like the passage of an act that de Blasio signed at the State of the City address banning all new fossil fuel infrastructure. And it was all of this kind of like tokenization of like youth ideas and climate demands that we'd been preaching for like a year, and every single strike we'd been attending. And we realized that what we need now is, just because there's a promise from these elected officials doesn't mean there's going to be any actual following up. Yeah. And so it's the responsibility of the impassioned youth progressive voter to like really ensure that every single politician and legislator follows up on their promise for climate justice.
And Azalea, the one that you just mentioned, that specific policy, the one where de Blasio signed at the State of the City with no new fossil fuel infrastructure, we are talking to our community leaders. And if you're looking in northern Brooklyn right now, there is a pipeline that's being built, the Northern Brooklyn Pipeline.
It's not though. They canceled the permit.
Did they cancel it?
A week and a half ago. Yeah.
My bad. I'm a little bit less.
Yeah. Okay, but can I just say something? What counts as fossil fuel infrastructure?
Exactly.
Is it a giant pipeline, or is it the fact that right now Con Edison is outfitting every single building in New York City that used to run on number 6 heating oil with natural gas boilers, fracked gas boilers? That is fossil fuel infrastructure.
Yeah.
That is unacceptable.
Absolutely.
Because that will last for 30 or 40 years, right? Fracked gas being pumped into every single building in New York City, instead of doing heat pumps, instead of having some renewable energy source, instead of electrifying those buildings, which we could do if we had a massive offshore wind farm, right? So let me just explain. This is what's so maddening, is that they come out there, exactly what you said, and say, oh, well, no fossil fuel infrastructure. Well, but we're talking about every single building in New York City.
Yeah.
Right? So this is something I want to put on your guys' radar as well. I remember when de Blasio first got elected, and it was like, hooray, we have a progressive and not Michael Bloomberg anymore. And myself and this guy, Tim Woodcock, who was a renewable energy engineer, we went in to meet with their Department of Environmental Protection. And we said, we have a plan, and we have an organization to solarize every high school in New York City. We want to put solar on the roof, and we want to have a training program for kids to understand how they can both use solar, work for solar, have solar jobs program, blah, blah, blah. They looked at us like we came from Mars. They were like, well, we have Birdie. Birdie was like their little weird mascot that was on the billboard that told people not to like idle their engines on the street. I mean, like, it was like we were not even in the same planet.
30
so please
years behind.
get in there and give them hell, because it was just, I couldn't believe it. In New York City, it was that lame.
No,
right?
Exactly. Like with the Northern Brooklyn Pipeline, as well as the Williams Pipeline, which just also got shut down, this didn't happen because Andrew Cuomo or Bill de Blasio was like, no, this is a promise that we were thinking about. This is a promise that we made. It took, well, the Williams Pipeline specifically took years of organizing, thousands of organizers coming together to do that. And the Northern Brooklyn Pipeline, I mean, credit where credit's due, the Sane Energy Project, you have to give them a lot of credit. They've been up in Albany, constantly lobbying. They mobilized Greenpoint to such an effective degree, completely swarmed community board meetings. They went all out. And this only got canceled a week ago during this full pandemic, because they were continuing construction throughout this pandemic, saying that this was something that really needed to happen. So de Blasio just fully ignored that promise. And when we actually got a chance to meet with them to talk about this, and we didn't really get a full follow back until we continued this pressured campaign with the Sane Energy Project as they continued building this up. So they're not holding on to their promises, which is why we have come together, and that's why we're holding on to taking actions to correct things like this.
So in terms of organizing, what are some of your strategies and tactics? I mean, we know, I've been reading Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau, just recently rereading it because it's such a rich piece of work and talking about how it is not enough to just vote. It's not enough to participate in sort of a gaming kind of a way. You have to actually get your hands dirty and get in the trenches. So what are your strategies and tactics that you want to see high school students or youth age people participate in? Because I don't know if they do even, I mean, it's hard to arrest people in a high school. I don't know if that even works. I'm sure they do. Well, I went to public school in New York State. There was a police precinct on the first floor, literally in the junior high school. But like, I'm just wondering, like, what are your thoughts?
Well, the beauty of the youth climate movement is that it spans literally like every single thing you could possibly think of. So there are definitely civil disobedience heavy organizations like Extinction Rebellion and Sunrise that do that end of stuff, but then there are organizations that underscore like indigenous sovereignty, like the International Indigenous Youth Council, and then we do some like more specific stuff that's related to like civic engagement and organization. And the brilliant part is that if you are a youth in literally any part of the country, no matter what it is that you're involved in or like interested in, you can get involved in the climate movement in a different way so that your like responsibility doesn't have to be just one thing. It doesn't just have to be striking. It doesn't just have to be lobbying your representatives. It can be everything and specific things all at once.
Yeah, and in terms with us, I think what is Azalea hit the nail on the head in terms of how we look at our theory of change, and that really just comes from a community-based organizing model. As young people, as high school, college students, we're at this very unique age, and I think that people and a lot of other organizers tend to ignore this, and because it's difficult to mobilize young people, definitely we fully understand that. But the model and what young people really bring to the table is a full, expansive network with their friends, their family, their relatives, their older relatives, people that have these ingrained institutions in the community, plus young people whose voices have yet to be tapped. So the way that we're building our model is bringing in young people and asking them to bring in their friends, their family, whoever they possibly can, and whatever level of engagement that looks like for specific people. Because I think that the way a lot of organizations and a lot of the way that this is talked about is asking people to take on so much that they possibly can't. And I think that we have to acknowledge that. Because there are some people who are able to come in phone bank regularly. They're elected officials who are able to go to hearings, but there are just as many people, if not more, who can't. People who have to go to work, people who have familial obligations, people who have other obligations. And people just don't work with those people in those organizations. So what we have to do is really bring people in, and whatever capacity you can do, whatever energizes you. I think as a young person, that's also something you have to take into consideration. What excites you, what energizes you, what are you passionate about? Asking those questions, bringing them in with open arms, bringing them into a community. And that's how you develop a model that works for Gen Z. I think that's what really Gen Z is looking at. They're not looking at like things that don't mean anything. I think now like our BS detector as like a generation has gone is decently well. I think that when we see politicians like talking, we can kind of discern fairly quickly if you're telling the truth or not. And we are able to utilize that. We just have to bring people in. I think that's really what we're working on right now. And that's the model that we're exploring. And that's what we're working with people. So that's that's the only way we can win this. It's a community-based organizing with the will of the people, bringing in people who aren't usually communicated with city government, with other organizations, bringing them all in and mobilizing them effectively.
You're watching Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. My guests are Azalea Daines and Shiv Soin from Triage and Fridays for Future in New York City. You know, we have a generation gap in so many different ways. And it's one of the things that I recognize and notice quite a bit with the climate movement, this wonderful youth climate movement that has just come exploding out. And like, for example, the fracking movement or movements that are happening that are less urban, that are more about, fracking in someone's backyard, pipelines, infrastructure, LNG terminals, movements that tend to be more rural or more suburban and older. There are people who have land. There are people who are defending their backyards. I find that fracking movement to be a bit older. And they're really, really dedicated, at least for the time that they work, because they are afraid of this thing that's happening right next door to them, right? And they're afraid for their kids, they're afraid for their own health. How do we start to bridge that generation gap? Because I think it's really important that we have an intergenerational movement, an intersectional movement. But how do we start to bridge? What are you guys' tactics for like appealing to an older generation that doesn't see climate as important because intrinsically they have less future than you do?
I think we found that it's more effective to work with organizers who have been fighting the fight for 20, 30, 40 years. And because there's already so much passion, we can combine our like fresh new ideas with their experience and like understanding of the climate movement that we don't necessarily have yet. There is a lot of talk in the climate movement about how it's not worth it for climate activists and organizers to engage with people that don't believe in climate change or don't think that climate justice is the number one thing we should be focusing on right now. And I disagree for the same reason that Shiv said earlier. It's like really important to get everyone engaged in every way we possibly can. And so that's by like using many, many different ways to get people involved, whether it's like art, writing, poetry, civil disobedience, policy. There's so many people in my generation who are eager and willing to work with activists who have been working, for example, in the People's Climate Movement for upwards of 30 years and who were engaged in that fracking fight. Because we understand that this is something that affects everyone, that climate change affects all of us equally. Not all of us equally, obviously, it affects disenfranchised communities the most, but because this is everyone's problem, it has to be everyone's fight. And so it is intrinsically an intergenerational movement.
All right. How do we, is there a website? How do we get involved? How do we support? Tell us for either the youth that are watching or listening to the program, how do we interact with it, with the new organization?
Zelia?
Yeah, our Instagram is at triage_team. And our Twitter is, I believe, the same thing. And our website is coming soon. And it should be, Shiv, what's the website?
Triageteam.org. That's our standard thing. Just our social medias have that underscore. And that's spelled TREEAGE.
All right. I want to thank you both for being so much. Thank you both so much for being with me today on the program, and good luck. And really, we need you. So please stay in touch with your objectives, and in any way that this program or myself we can help. I'm really, really thankful that you're out there organizing and doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much
Josh.
for having us.
It's great to be here.
Right. Okay. See you next time.
Okay. Bye.
You're watching Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal and why we're not going back. Today's program is about organizing. And organizing doesn't just happen in the political space. Organizing happens in the cultural space. My next guest, Zoe Bookbinder, is doing an extraordinary new project. It's not necessarily a new project. It's a project that's been around for quite a long time that is now just coming to fruition. So here we have Zoe Bookbinder with Prison Music Project, a song right now from Zoe. Have a listen.
The Prison Music Project is a collaborative album I made with 9 writers and musicians who are incarcerated or were incarcerated. Some of them are free now. When I volunteered at New Folsom Prison, which is a maximum security prison, men's prison in California. And out of that work and witnessing prison and what happened inside prisons, I wrote this song, which is called Rise.
No one should live inside a cage. I don't believe it keeps us safe. Darling, it's all about money. Nothing is too precious, honey. It's all about the money, honey. Rise, rise, rise. Laying bodies like bricks building spires. Somebody's building empires, leaving behind a trail of fire. From the ash rises a choir. Rises a choir. Rise, rise, rise. Muffled voices through the wall. High price paid for a phone call. We amplify as we multiply. So listen as the silence dies. Hear the choir rise. Rise, 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 rise.
You are tuned in to Staying Home with Josh Fox, your revolutionary guide to the Green New Deal. My guest is Zoe Bookbinder. I wanted to make sure we had a little extra time with you today because I thought the project that you're doing with the prisons, what's it called? Prison Songs?
Prison Music Project.
Prison Music Project. It's so extraordinary. I watched the video, which has you and Ani DeFranco, who's one of my all-time heroes, of course, talking about this project. And you started off with just one visit to this Folsom prison, right? Which is a very storied prison, right? Folsom Prison. I'm assuming it's the same prison as in the Johnny Cash Folsom Prison Blues and all of those
It's right
things.
next to it, but it's
Next to it.
higher security than the old one.
Well, of course, they have to make things worse and worse. Well, we can talk about that. But so what happened? You went in and then boom, 10 years spending all this amazing period of time. And now this project is just coming to fruition now. Talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I started it when I was 25 years old, which just feels so wild. And the May 19th was the 10-year anniversary of my first visit to that prison. So it's truly a decade.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's finally releasing, which, I have so many feelings about it. But mostly it's excitement, because I've been wanting to share these stories for so long, and the people who the stories belong to have been wanting these stories to be out there. And I feel a huge amount of responsibility to those people to tell their stories in the right way and present them in the right way, which is why it's taken a decade to get to the point.
And you weren't allowed to record in the prison. So you say you became the recorder, which is so the folk tradition, right? Because we learn things handed down one person to another person, one person to another person. Talk about the process, right? You wrote some of this material. Ani DeFranco wrote some of the material, but they're all on, some of these songs are from the prisoners themselves, and some of them are poems. Tell us about the process.
Yeah. So all of the lyrics, all of the words are from incarcerated or formerly incarcerated people, all people that I worked with at New Folsom Prison. And some of the songs are songs that I learned directly from the songwriter. Some are poems that I or Ani set to music. Some are raps that we were able to record over the phone, because you can't really sing over the phone, but you can rap over the phone. So, you know, as much as
I kind of
love that it's this.
I've always loved phone recordings. I don't know why. There's something very nostalgic about the way the phone feels and sounds. It's very emotional.
Ani actually has this microphone that is in an old telephone receiver, and she uses it all the time. We're going to use it in the release show, which is on June 5th, and it'll be available on the internet, and folks can buy tickets at prisonmusicproject.com soon. But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, so yeah, I liked thinking of myself as a recording device, because that is really the folk tradition, and because this album contains so many complex issues that are really heavy in our society, like racism is the main one that comes to mind, that feels, hard for me alone to try to address, obviously, as a white person. And so that's why it took a huge number of people to get this album where we wanted it to be. And because just me and Ani couldn't present a project that talks so much about racism as two white people.
But you are using this project as a form of organizing. Talk about how it's a fundraiser. It's also about advocacy. How is this not just great music, but also an organizing strategy?
I mean, this project has completely changed how I approach music in general, but I don't need to get too much into that. But yeah, this project, I mean, initially what I wanted to do, for the most part, I wasn't even thinking about making great music, though I think great music is such an incredible tool and a way to reach people with their guard down, so that they can truly receive with an open heart and open ears what you have to say. But the goal from the beginning has been to share these stories and these experiences, because they are locked in prison as much as the people they belong to. And what I witnessed going in was the thing that we commonly believe out here, which is that prisons are full of bad, violent people. That's not true. And I desperately wanted to share this experience with people who didn't have the access that I had to the inside of that prison. And I thought, how do I share this? I can't bring a camera in. I can't bring a recording device in. How do I share what I'm learning here? And the most important thing that I'm learning is the stories of these people, because in prison, these people are so dehumanized. And then the representation in our culture and in media is so dehumanized and one-dimensional. And so I want to honor their humanity and affirm their humanity and show people who are believing this common story and this myth about people in prison that no, they are human beings like you and I.
Yeah. Tim DeChristopher, when he was in federal prison for 2 years, he remarked that when he was in prison, he said he met about 50 people who should be just put away from society forever, and 5 of them were inmates. So he was supporting what you were saying. Where in the last moment that we have where can we find the project? How do we buy it, support it, enjoy it?
prisonmusicproject.com has all the info you need. And the video that you watched is there. There's an interview with me and Ani on there that you can play about the project. You can pre-order the album there. Everything you need is there.
Thanks so much for being with us today. It's beautiful, amazing, and really important work. Okay, Zoe Bookbinder, you've been listening to and watching Staying Home with Josh Fox, Your Revolutionary Guide to the Green New Deal and Why We're Not Going Back. Until tomorrow, please keep organizing, stay strong, stay healthy, stay home. Staying home is a revolutionary act. Don't let them send you out into the disease. We have to absolutely change the world. Part of the way we do this right now is by staying true, staying healthy, staying home. Thanks. We'll see you tomorrow. Hey everybody, thanks for watching today's show. If you like the program, which it sounds like you do, I'm sure you're also going to like this book. It's my first book. It's called The Truth Has Changed. It's got a foreword by Bill McKibben. It's out from 7 Stories Press. This book is a first-hand account of the massive smear and misinformation campaign that the oil and gas industry ran against yours truly. It was orchestrated by, among other people, Steve Bannon and Breitbart.com. So you get a sense of the kinds of techniques that they were using. But this was all happening back in 2010, 2011, 2012. And what I went through personally is very similar to what the Trump campaign and the Trump administration put the electorate through in 2016. They learned my psychology, my personal details, and they used that to attack me. That's the way the Trump campaign uses information that they get about you, your data, your psychographics. They tailored 5 million individual specified ads towards voters in swing states, and it's all right here in The Truth Has Changed. It starts off as a first-hand account of my frontline reporting from 9/11 through the BP oil spill, through the fracking wars, all the way to Standing Rock. But really what it does is it zeroes in on how the internet targets you specifically and voters specifically, and gets at what we care about the most to twist that inside out and get them to vote the way they want you to vote. So check it out. The Truth Has Changed. It's a beautiful edition. It's got some pictures. And I'm sure you'll love it. So you can get it from 7 Stories Press or at www.thetruthhaschangedtour.com. Thanks.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a Velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a. Call us now at Simonson Sign Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street. and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
You want to know how you could save money and save the planet? Hello, I got an awesome option for you guys. Aspiration.com/TYT. You plant not 1, not 5, 10 trees when you sign up. You know what trees do? Not a big deal, but one large tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. That's 40 people's oxygen just by signing up at aspiration.com/TYT. Sign up for a free spend and save account right now at aspiration.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion. Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views. Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
Guys, as we're all home, we're using the internet way more. You need your internet protected. You don't want prying eyes in there. No hackers. Dun, 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 dun. They're there. Actually, they're now more active than ever. So make sure you got a VPN. NordVPN has been with the Young Turks for a long time. They're one of the best services available. So NordVPN.com/TYT, and you get a free month extra. Plus, you get 70% off of a 3-year plan. NordVPN.com/TYT. All right, welcome to the conversation on the TYT Network. Dr. Rashad Ritchie's back with us. He is a former director of the Democratic Party of Georgia. Obviously, news coming out of Atlanta in relation to the protest there that we want to talk about. He's also a radio talk show host there. In fact, voted best talk radio personality in Atlanta. He's got the Rashad Ritchie Morning Show. He's editor at large at Rolling Out Magazine. We did this last time. It'll take half the interview to go through all that. So, Rashad, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's start with Atlanta. I want to talk about two things there. I know this is now feels like a year ago, but it was actually less than a week ago when the big protest broke out in Atlanta and folks went down to the CNN building and there was unrest there. So that rattled a lot of people's cages in the media, and they got kind of freaked out by that. Let's start there. So why do you think they went to the CNN building in Atlanta?
There's a logistical reason why they went to the CNN building, because basically when you do a major protest in downtown Atlanta, the CNN building is one of the largest structures. It's very visible, and they also are being strategic. Many are looking at making sure media has an opportunity to highlight the protest. And this was also a strategy utilized by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others to get the attention of the media. And I know that a lot of attention has been placed on those who have committed acts of rioting, which I don't condone rioting, nor do I advise it. But Dr. King said wise words about rioting. He said, a riot is the voice of the unheard. And the same vigor that we're using to come against those who riot, we need to have that same vigor and energy as it relates to the things that led to the riot. And if we could match that energy, I think this problem would be solved tomorrow.
I think the CNNs of the world are kind of shocked when it comes to their doorstep, but they are part of the power structure, right? And in fact, let me go broader, and then I'll come back to Atlanta. As I saw local news here in LA, but throughout the country as well, and as our audience chimed in on that and what they were watching, it seemed to me that the news isn't getting it. They think that they're part of the good guys that are reporting on these matters. That's their self-perception. But when I watch it, I see burning buildings, looters on a loop, almost like riot porn. And I don't see a lot of context as to why people are protesting in the first place. That's my impression. But I was curious what your impression is. Also, how's the local press in Atlanta? It might be better. So what's your takeaway on how the press has treated it so far?
Man, I completely concur. I actually received a phone call today on my show from a listener who said that there was one news agency who got it right and who actually went deeper into the story. And by happenstance, I'm thankful. I actually work for that news agency as the political analyst. But you're right, the context has been left out of a lot of the storytelling. I've challenged the media here locally to make sure they tell the full context, the full story, because there's a cause and effect relationship to all of this. We cannot act as if this comes out of thin air. So while, yes, it's good to report on the news, regardless of what news it is, if it is newsworthy and it is consumed by the public, you report on it. But if you're reporting on the minority situation, because let's be honest, buildings being destroyed or somebody throwing a bottle of water, that's a minority report. That's not happening by the majority of the protesters. What is the majority conversation happening with those who are protesting on the ground? I would like to see more of that in mainstream media.
What do you think is happening with the small amount of violence that's happening? It makes it like, that's part of my beef with local news. It makes it look like the overwhelming majority of what's happening is violence, because they show the violence on a loop. And in violence, I mean the looting, the burning buildings, etc., right? And so it makes it seem like, wow, that's the only thing that's happening, when in reality it's a small percentage. But when we're talking about having given that context, in that small percentage, what do you think is happening there? Is that, so the Trump people say it's all Antifa, whatever that means, but I don't discount that it could be left-wing groups, radical left-wing groups. I don't discount that it could be the community. I don't discount that it might not be the community at all, right? So what's your take on who's mainly instigating that stuff?
Yeah, so we won't know for sure until, everything, the smoke clears and people are arrested and have to plead guilty or go to trial. right? So that's how you really know what the data is. Right now, everybody's making their best guess. But here's what I think is really happening. You have a very small number of individuals who are hell bent on destroying something, or they wanted to go a little further in their civil unrest and throw something. But that is a small group. Now, there's something in psychology called group theory or group dynamics. And that group theory basically says when you get a large group of frustrated people together, and one or two people decide to do something that maybe the group disagrees with, well, some of those other individuals in the group will start doing things that they would never do as individuals. So you have some of that happening as well. But I want to bring up something I think is really ironic, and I challenge everyone who is a student of history and a lover of freedom to think about this. The Boston Tea Party was not a party. We call it a party today, but it was actually a riot. The Boston Tea Party destroyed over $1 million worth of merchandise. And those individuals were white, male Americans who disguised themselves, and they decided to fight against what they considered to be government oppression. Now, today we praise them as patriots and heroes. And while, once again, I am not condoning the rioting that's happening, I do find it interesting that in our retelling of the story, we have somehow figured out a way to praise these individuals who rioted back during the Boston Tea Party, and we're calling anyone who throws a bottle today a thug.
And by the way, it's not just the Boston Tea Party. History is replete with folks that do looting, including Don Rumsfeld, almost encouraging the looting in Iraq, saying that that's a very normal event to happen, almost celebrating it. And I can go on and on when people that are perceived as on the side of the powerful, oftentimes based on race, but not always based on race, do it, then it's wonderful and it's an uprising against the oppressive government, etc. But when minorities do it, well, hey, wait a minute, now that's looting and rioting, etc. And so, look, there are hard questions in here because I don't know that Martin Luther King would have gotten what he got done without Malcolm X. And now, but that brings you to an uncomfortable conclusion that and I've seen some of the protesters in the very brief interviews with local news, because usually they don't give them a voice, but when they do, say, hey, listen, man, when the building wasn't burning, you weren't paying attention.
But that's a sad reality.
Yeah, and so that's also true. That doesn't mean you should burn the building, but it is true. So how do we deal with that? What do we make of that?
Man, you're making a statement of fact, brother. Let's go back to the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was fighting for an enhanced civil rights bill. When he was assassinated, President Lyndon B. Johnson did not want to pass or sign a civil rights bill, even when Dr. King was assassinated. But 7 days after the assassination of King, they signed that landmark civil rights bill that he had been fighting damn near his entire adult life to get passed. Why did they do that? It wasn't because they were remorseful over the death of Dr. King. It was because the 7 days between his assassination to the signing of that bill, 110 cities in the United States of America rioted. That is a statement of fact. And in order to stop the riots, and in order to stop the protests, to make commerce a reality again in these cities, the President of the United States signed the 1968 Civil Rights Act. That 7 days determined it. Not the death of Dr. King alone, but what happened after the death of Dr. King played a lot into it.
You know, it's interesting because I already got something really productive out of this conversation. You made a great point there. So it was that it caused the economy to stop. And yes. So when people stop making money, they start paying attention. It happened with coronavirus. It's now happening with these protests. And it also, that's the same reason that the civil rights movement did the bus strikes and did all the different strikes and labor movements that they did. Because once people stop making money, all of a sudden you have their attention. So my point there is that I don't think violence is necessarily the precipitating factor. It's the fact that people stop making money. That's the factor. So maybe there's another way to do that minus the violence.
Yeah, I agree. And there are multiple ways to protest the economics. We call it economic withdrawal or a boycott. That's another familiar term. But the end result is to halt the enterprise of America in order for the powers that be to pay attention. It has worked that way for every protest, including the before mentioned Boston Tea Party. They wanted to get the government's attention, and so they hit something that was highly taxed and highly profitable, and it did just that.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding. Because this is C-SPAN, and anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a Call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
You want to know how you could save money and save the planet? Hello, I got an awesome option for you guys. Aspiration.com/TYT. You plant not 1, not 5, 10 trees when you sign up. You know what trees do? Not a big deal, but one large tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. That's 40 people's oxygen just by signing up at aspiration.com/TYT. Sign up for a free spend and save account right now at aspiration.com/TYT.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the U.S. population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion. Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views. Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
Guys, as we're all home, we're using the internet way more. You need your internet protected. You don't want prying eyes in there. No hackers. Dun, 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 dun. They're there. Actually, they're now more active than ever. So make sure you got a VPN. NordVPN has been with the Young Turks for a long time. They're one of the best services available. So NordVPN.com/TYT, and you get a free month extra. Plus, you get 70% off of a 3-year plan. NordVPN.com/TYT. Dr. Rashad Ritchie, and Rashad, you made a point right before we came on air that's really important. I want to go back to. So now the reaction of this government, federal government, has not been, oh my God, yet another unarmed African American man was killed. How do we fix it? In fact,
I literally haven't heard one word about how they're going to fix it, or if they think that there's anything to fix. Instead, their reaction was, we're going to use the military. So what do you make of that reaction, and what does that tell you about the government?
That tells me that the president of the United States is not truly equipped to understand the complexities of race relations in this country to a degree where he can articulate an effective message or solution. So the president's response literally to American citizens protesting about police brutality is to bring in a police force who has absolutely no training on dealing with citizens. That is his solution here. We are talking about martial law. The president of the United States has threatened to use martial law in order to stop American citizens from protesting. Now, he's saying it's about the violence and the looting and the rioting. Once again, that is a spin because the vast majority of these protesters aren't doing anything of the sort. Now, he wants to go to that extreme in order to respond to the minority of looters and rioters that are happening in this country. But where's the extreme action when we were complaining about police brutality? Where's the government intervention when we were talking about the inequity and injustices that were boiling up to this moment? No extreme action, not even moderate action took place at that point. Now, all of a sudden, we're at 100 on a scale of 1 to 100, and it's the military. That is his threat.
So it almost looks like, not almost, it looks like, hey, we had a problem with police violence, and Trump's answer is, then I'll give you more state violence.
Well, and I want you to remember during his speech, he spoke in code, man. This cat has a great connection with the people that follow him. He said that he's protecting every freedom-loving American, and he went into his talking points, but he said something that a lot of people missed. He said he's protecting Americans, including, and he made emphasis, your Second Amendment right, which is your right to bear arms. What was the code in that message? He's letting citizens know that support him and support his ideology, that he's going to protect their rights to bear arms and use it against these citizen protesters. That's what I got out of that message. He wasn't even talking about the Second Amendment. This conversation has never been about the Second Amendment, but all of a sudden he inserted it in his speech as it relates to military intervention. That was code directly to his surrogates.
So now we know that because it's not like he meant, hey, protesters, don't forget you have Second Amendment rights. You could also bring guns to the protest.
Right.
Nobody meant that. And if he didn't mean that, then who did he mean?
What else does he mean? And remember, we're still experiencing protesting throughout this country where armed men are going to government buildings and nobody has lifted a finger to remove them. Why are you protesting with an assault weapon? What do you plan to do with that assault weapon? Why are we not outraged? But I promise you this, if you had 500 black men with armed at a government building, this president would respond to that immediately.
Yeah, look, the use of the military inside the country is incredibly dangerous because if we get used to that and the military starts taking orders inside the country, well, then the president can say, I didn't lose the election. And the military says I didn't lose the election, so I don't care what the numbers say or the facts say. And then we live in a military state, which the right wing hilariously claims that they're against. Like they say that's the number one thing they're against, and in fact, they can't wait for it. So it almost seems like it depends on who's in charge of that police state.
That's what it depends on, because this is tribalism. This is what tribalism looks like. Everything gets excused for the tribal leader, and Trump has become the tribal leader. He has not tried to live up to the institution of the presidency. Instead, he brought the presidency down to fit him. And this is what he's been able to do. He's been able to transform the Republican Party at its core. They are no longer the party of family values. They are no longer the party of the fiscal conservative. They are no longer the party of Christian compassion. They are no longer that party. They have lost their identity. It is now sucked in the ego of this president. And I'm telling Republicans, if you don't figure out how to do something quick and transform the narrative, your party will forever be affixed to the presidency of this one man.
So I believe you've called this the beginning of the hard shift. What does that mean? What is the hard shift?
The hard shift is this. The day, the era of blown up charges are over. We're talking about police culture. There's a culture in policing that says whatever the cop says about you is true. And even if it's not true, you're going to be significantly inconvenienced until the court determines that it's not true. The culture also protects cops typically in criminal behavior. We would call it excessive force. Excessive force is illegal. You don't get excessive force. You don't use excessive force as an excuse to get a write-up at a job. If you use excessive force at your workplace, what is that? That's called assault. You go to jail for that if somebody is willing to press charges. But all of a sudden, excessive force became utilized as a way to buffer cops from the reality of their criminal behavior. And I'm happy to say that even in Fulton County, you just had 6 cops in Atlanta. 6 cops have now been charged with a criminal offense. Some of them were aggravated assault because they engaged in excessive force. That is part of the hard shift.
Yeah, so we saw them get dragged out of the cars. Those 2 young students. And so for the folks that are not following that story day to day, tell us who they were and why the cops assaulted them, and why you think it's assault, what the cops did.
Yeah, so we don't know exactly why the cops decided to approach this vehicle, break the window, bust a tire, tase them, mace them, and drag them out the car. Okay, we don't know why exactly yet, but we do know it happened. Both of these are college students. One goes to Morehouse College. The young lady goes to Spelman, and they were in shock. They were in fear, and they were dragged out of that vehicle, placed under arrest. I don't even think the young lady ever received a charge. The young man got a couple of misdemeanor charges. The DA looked at this case quickly. The chief of police fired those 2 of those cops immediately and put the rest of them on desk duty. The district attorney, Paul Howard of Fulton County in Atlanta, decided to charge all 6 of these cops with crimes ranging from destruction of property all the way to aggravated assault. Now, there's a lot of video footage. It was also caught by a local affiliate, WGCL in Atlanta. And then you had the body cams of these police officers. The reason why this happened so quickly, and I spoke to the DA today, he said because he had all of the evidence. He had all of the video evidence. He had all of the eyewitness testimony, and he was able to obtain a warrant from the Superior Court judge to effect an arrest. And these cops have until Friday to turn themselves in. That's part of that culture shift. What's good for me and you, if it would be a crime if you and I did it, it's a crime if they did it. This is not really excessive force. This is what we call unlawful force because force was not even necessary or required in the first place.
So some folks saw that the 2 officers who were fired were African American, and the right wing reacts by saying, "Well, then it must not be a race issue." Let me just let you take that. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I got some of that on social media too, and I've been very clear. I don't give a damn what race they are. If they are committing criminal acts under the authority and power of that badge that we pay for as citizens, as taxpayers, and that we believe in them enough to publicly protect us, then if they act out of line, they need to be held accountable to the law. This is a microcosm and does not somehow dissuade us from the argument of the macrocosm, which is systemic racism and prejudicial behavior in the United States of America. And for anyone who would say, oh, these are black cops, obviously racism doesn't exist, I can't even argue with clowns like that because they're not even serious people.
Yes, and it's in the culture. So
Right.
what we're trying to fix is the culture of policing.
That's
so,
right.
As we near the end here, I got to ask you about that. My sense is, so we know Trump, his answer is more violence, not less violence. We talked about it. But I don't think Democrats have done enough to say, no, there's something wrong with the culture of policing throughout the country. There's something wrong with the training of police throughout the country. What's your take on that? Do you share that sentiment? And if so, because in order to get reform, we actually have to have the politicians do something. So how do we get the Democrats to actually understand what the problem is and fight for solutions?
Yeah, you cannot distinguish between a Republican administration and a Democratic administration when it comes to police culture. They are similar. You see the same issues regardless of who the mayor is or what party affiliation, who the governor is or what party affiliation, which means that the culture is deeper than partisanship. So we got to stop talking about this in the political partisan context and start talking about this as a community-led, issues-based context. Here's what I see happening. If Democrats are going to be the party that leads the progressive movement, I'm telling every mayor, county commissioner, governor, attorney general, these are things you have to do. You have to now listen to the politics of the community and do it the way it should have been done day one and get out of the politics of the police unions and that blue shield, because that will not protect your political future. That community will, these cats will not. That's my response to it.
100%. They're so deferential to police unions. It's to the great detriment of the rest of us. So, Dr. Rashad Ritchie in Atlanta, if folks are in Atlanta or anywhere else, how can they catch you?
Man, they can catch me 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on News and Talk 1380 WAOK. You can always follow me on social media at Rashad1380 and find me online at RashadRitchie.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ritchie. We appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Reports were they brought you downstairs in the White House to a bunker.
Well, it was a false report. I wasn't down. I went down during the day, and I was there for a tiny, little short period of time, and it was much more for an inspection. There was no problem during the day.
Hey, pal, your excuses are your own.
And I go down. I've gone down 2 or 3 times, all for inspection, and we brought in the troops.
Oh, what a big man you are. Hey, let me buy you a pack of gum. I'll show you how to chew it. Ooh.
Turks shaking your head concerned with the guy. What is this? This is 2020 and the debacle of our lives. Please just get us to 2021. By hook or by crook, just get us to 2021. I'm not even playing. tyt.com/go. Okay, just go all the way to 2021 and then everything will be fine. Okay? I hope. I believe everything will be fine.
God, it's amazing. Like, I used to be like you, Cenk. Like, I remember in 2016, I was like, all right, just got to get through 2016. Got to get through 2016. It can't get any worse than this. And it did. So now I've just learned to like enjoy the chaos that we're currently in, because based on the trend we've been experiencing, it's just going to get worse.
No. I see a tiny little light at the end of that very, very long tunnel. Okay. And look, down goes Steve King. Steve King is no longer a U.S. congressman, voted out by a very red district in Iowa. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying there's a glimmer of hope, okay? So you want to make hope happen? I'm not playing. tyt.com/go. My hope is that you get us to 2021 and we're all right from there on. 40,850. Got to get to 200 every month. Long road, brothers and sisters. Every dollar counts. Every dollar matters. We love you. We love you for doing it. We do this show together. Our goal at the end of the day is to empower you. And so I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way to empower you guys. And hey, look, Jamal Bowman looks like he's in good shape. J.D. Schulten looks like he's in good shape. Don't call it a comeback. Here come progressives. All right. Anyway, that being said, we are still in the middle of 2020 with disastrous news. So, Anna, take it away.
All right. Well, we start off with some drama. Someone in the White House disagreed with Donald Trump as the White House turns.
Made some very big mistakes.
I asked for his resignation.
I'm disappointed in the Attorney General.
Cenk, White House sources have been speaking to the press about how Donald Trump feels about Defense Secretary Mark Esper. And I was actually shocked to find that Trump had issues with Mark Esper before some of Esper's statements this week in regard to using the military against peaceful protesters. Now, in a story that we shared with you recently, Esper said that he actually disagrees with using military force against protesters. He said so during his own press briefing. Take a quick look at that.
To use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations now. I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act.
So now senior Republican sources speaking to CNN say that Donald Trump is not happy about what happened in that press conference because there was a departure from the messaging that Donald Trump wants, and that is messaging to attempt to intimidate these protesters by the threat of military force against them. Trump and other top officials, including National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, are not happy with Esper after his Wednesday remarks. Three people familiar with the White House's thinking said. One White House source said, I think this is the end for him. And if you just look back at Trump's 3.5 years in office, it's not surprising if Trump is considering firing Esper for disagreeing with him. A U.S. official close to Esper and familiar with the White House thinking said that the secretary is being skewered by those inside the White House for coming out Wednesday to express his views. I'm not sure who thought that was a good idea, another official told CNN. And by the way, Cenk, I mentioned earlier that Trump already had issues with Esper, and I didn't know about that. I was curious about it. Like, what did Mark Esper do to cross Donald Trump? And, just when you think you understand just how thin Donald Trump's skin really is, you come across a video like what you're about to see and realize, no, it's actually much thinner, because what Esper said in this interview with Bret Baier last December apparently upset Donald Trump. Let's just quickly watch that video, and then I want to hear your thoughts.
Like working for President Trump?
I have a very good relationship with President Trump. We have a great national security team. You called out Robert O'Brien there. My classmate, Secretary Pompeo, and I have a good relationship. It's a good, strong team. The president is always open to good ideas. He lets you have your say, your word. We're constantly kicking ideas around within the team. So it's good. And he's just another one of many bosses you've had in your time that you learn to work with. And again, I think what's reassuring, he really believes in America's military and our young servicemen and women.
So the issue that Trump had with that statement was that Mark Esper said he's just like any other boss. But it was like a long statement where he's like applauding Trump, saying all these complimentary things about him. It's just amazing how thin-skinned Donald Trump really is. But there's actually an instigator within the White House, which I'll get to in just a minute. But I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, hashtag baby. And if it turns out you can put baby in a corner as long as it's in a bunker. Esper said it's like working with any other boss. You know, you learn how to deal with it. Something along those lines. You guys just heard it yourselves. And of course, we all know why he's saying that. And to be fair to Trump, he knows why he's saying it, because the guy's a moron and he's super hard to deal with. He changes his mind all the time, doesn't know what he's talking about, gives you nonsensical orders, and endangers your career and sanity and everything else around him. So everybody knows that's what that was a reference to. But you're right. It was smothered in a flattery sandwich, and it still wasn't enough for Bunker Boy. So now, Esper, why did he do what he did? Because he's clearly now saying something that Donald Trump doesn't agree with. Donald Trump made a big show out of like, yeah, we're going to send the military in. And here's the defense secretary saying, I don't agree. Well, what happened was Mad Dog Mattis came out, and several other generals did, and Jim Mattis is the former defense secretary, and said that Trump is making a mockery of the Constitution, but furthermore said that Esper and Milley, who's the head of the Joint Chiefs, should not have joined him in that photo op. And that criticism is stinging Esper, and he knows that they are right. That's why he did this absurd thing where he was like, was that a photo op? I didn't know where we were going. I thought maybe we were going to get a sandwich or something. He didn't say the sandwich part, but he did say everything. It's like, I didn't know that. We were going to say Jaws. They were taking pictures. I didn't know. So he's backpedaling furiously because for a couple of reasons. One, Trump's reign is going to be over hopefully in a couple of months, and then you have to worry about being humiliated for the rest of your life if you joined his illegal and unconstitutional actions, and they are worried about their careers. Let's keep it real. But the second thing is the sense of the culture of the military, and the culture is that you don't get involved in civilian things, and you don't violate the Constitution, and that's what your oath is to, a Constitution. And so he knows that if he does what Trump orders, if Trump eventually orders it, it's going to be a violation of his oath. And he's trying to send a message there like, don't do it, but that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is he's going to get steamrolled. Yeah, look,
I could be wrong, but I am not buying for a second that any of these generals or, by the way, including Mattis, actually have any concern about the oath or protecting the Constitution. And let me explain why. Sure, yes, Esper's also worried about his career, but more than anything, let's just take it back to the root of the issue. Who funds the military, Cenk? We do. We do. We fund the military.
This is a trick question.
No, but okay, so also, how do they recruit people to be part of the military? By all sorts of pro-democracy, protect the country, protect our Constitution propaganda, right? How are you going to recruit people? And how are you going to persuade Americans to comfortably hand over their hard-earned money to fund the military when the military is fighting the very people that fund it? It's just not good PR for the military. And I really think that that's at the heart of what we're hearing. And look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just have a very dark view of humans. Maybe I'm too pessimistic. But these are people who watch Donald Trump take a giant crap on our Constitution over and over again, basically scale back our civil liberties since the beginning of his administration, scale back on protecting our very environment, the environment we live in since the beginning of his administration. You think they actually care about doing the moral thing here? Of course not. I think what they do care about, especially Jim Mattis, is, well, if the military or funding the military isn't a popular thing to do anymore, how are we going to lobby to members of Congress to increase our military budget when their own constituents are viciously against it? I think that's really at the heart of what we're seeing right now. I don't know, just my thoughts.
Yeah, Anna, look, that might be the underlying reasons, but the culture is real, and culture does determine action. And this is not just the U.S. military. A lot of militaries, Turkish military and so many others, have this edict of do not turn your guns on your own citizens. And when they do, there is rage over it, which goes to your point as well. But it's against military culture, and definitely in America. So I think that Esper, having grown up in that culture, felt the pushback there, and that's part of why he did what he did. To me, the most important question is he going to last these next 5 months, or actually more importantly, until January 21st? Because if they get rid of him now, God knows who Trump will replace him with. If he replaces him with like Jared Kushner, I'm only half kidding. It might be that he then, when push comes to shove and we're after the election and Trump is lost and he tells the defense secretary, we're not leaving. Well, apparently Esper would say, yes, you are, but the next guy might not.
Well, Kayleigh McEnany was actually asked about whether or not Esper's days are numbered. And I think her answer, even though, of course, she's not as forthcoming as she should be, still did reveal a lot. Take a look.
The president still have confidence in Secretary Esper?
So not that I'm aware of in terms of expressing his opinion, and I wouldn't get into the private conversations that went on here in the White House. And with regard to whether the president has confidence, I would say if he loses confidence in Secretary Esper, I'm sure you all will be the first to know.
But as of right now, he still does?
As of right now, Secretary Esper is still Secretary Esper, and should the president lose faith, we will all learn about that in the future.
Yeah, so for the moment being, Secretary Esper is still Secretary Esper. And if that changes, you'll be the first to know. I'm not qualified for this.
Well, I think she's saying something slightly different. First of all, Anna Kasparian is still Anna Kasparian. Okay, there's two hilarious parts of that. One is that statement, obviously. But the other is her saying, well, if he loses faith in Esper, you guys will be the first to know. I think she's being literal, because it's not like she's been there a couple of weeks. She knows Trump's not following any protocol. He's not going to go through his communications department. Get out of here. He's not going to tell Kayleigh
tweet it
you first. He's going to tweet it. So she knows. So she's like, what do I know, man? I'm just up here trying to do PR. I don't have any actual information. And he's going to tweet it the minute he's ready to go. And it is what it is.
Exactly. All right, well, let's move on to Mattis. I already, unfortunately, gave you most of my commentary on that, but there's still more to the story. So Donald Trump is not responding well to his former defense secretary, Jim Mattis, calling him out pretty aggressively in a statement to The Atlantic. So Mattis actually denounced Trump and his actions in a statement to The Atlantic following Trump's decision to viciously attack the peaceful protesters in D.C. just so he can clear the way for his ridiculous photo op, right? So we've all seen the videos. It was terrible. And now Mattis is speaking out, and here's what he wrote. When I joined the military some 50 years ago, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Never did I dream that troops taking the same oath would be ordered under any circumstance to violate the constitutional rights of their fellow citizens, much less to provide a bizarre photo op for the elected commander-in-chief with military leadership standing along. Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years of this deliberate effort. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years without mature leadership. And then finally, he says, we must reject any thinking of our cities as a battle space that our uniformed military is called upon to dominate. At home, we should use our military only when requested to do so. on very rare occasions by state governors. Militarizing our response, as we witnessed in Washington, D.C., sets up a conflict, a false conflict between the military and civilian society. And just a quick note, when he references the word battle space, what he's referring to is a word that was reportedly used by Mark Esper in describing the area where the DC protesters were peacefully protesting. And, Esper rightfully got a lot of backlash for that. Now, Trump, in typical Trump fashion, responded on Twitter in the way that you would expect him to. Here's Bunker Boy's statement. Probably the only thing Barack Obama and I have in common is that we both had the honor of firing Jim Mattis, the world's most overrated general. I asked for his letter of resignation and felt great about it. His nickname was Chaos, which I didn't like, and changed it to Mad Dog. But did you? I think Mad Dog was his nickname before he even joined the administration. I mean, I could be wrong. Also, he says his, meaning Mattis's, primary strength was not military, but rather personal public relations. I gave him a new life, things to do, and battles to win. But he seldom brought home the bacon. I didn't like his leadership style or much else about him, and many others agree, glad he is gone. I didn't know that the defense secretary was supposed to bring home bacon.
Okay, so much to say about this. I think Jim Mattis put out that statement as a signal not to American citizens, but to the U.S. military. That was a long way of saying, remember your oath to the Constitution. I think he's worried that not only is Donald Trump going to use the military inside the country, but also use it to try to hold on to power. And so that was a shot across the bow to say, remember, if you're in the military, do not listen to this madman. And it partly worked because Mark Esper then came out and said, well, look, I didn't really mean battle space, and I didn't know that was a photo op, and no, we should not use the Insurrection Act and use the military inside the U.S. So in a sense, mission accomplished. In a sense, he brought home the bacon there, if you will. Now onto an amusing part of the story. Donald Trump, in the middle of a pandemic, 108,000 dead, 40 million now, more than 40 million unemployed. We got tanks rolling down the streets. I mean, civil unrest. In the midst of all this, his retired four-star general, former defense secretary, his own former defense secretary, comes out with a serious screed against Trump and in favor of the U.S. Constitution. And his response is, oh, yeah, I changed your nickname. Oh, my God. I mean, that's why Mattis put in there the thing about needing mature leadership, because he worked with him for 2 years. He knows he's a child, a total, utter child. And Trump's response to that is, oh, you think we need mature leadership? Well, that's why I changed your nickname to Mad Dog. And Anna, you're right. No, he always had the nickname Mad Dog. Trump's a madman. He's like, no, I don't. I gave him the nickname. I gave him the good nickname, not the bad nickname. Oh, I'm such a good nickname giver. You're president.
It's amazing. And also, I think it was his nickname before because he likes that nickname. like you know what I mean? It was like a nickname given to him in admiration for his hawkiness. It's just amazing that Trump is like, oh yeah, I'm the one who gave him that nickname he really likes. Oh, bravo, you're a real leader there. He's just so sad. He's just a sad, pathetic, weak, child. And I just can't get over, the fact that he's this way, that he's, again, the most powerful person in the world who has all this, he's had all this privilege his entire life. He didn't have to work a day in his life. His daddy handed him over $400 million in his inheritance. And with all that privilege, with all that luck in his life, he still thinks he's a victim, and it blows my mind. Anyway, I do want to note that there are people in this world who are actually more pathetic than Donald Trump because they defend him no matter what, just to stay relevant. People like Senator Lindsey Graham. Watch.
thing I would tell General Mattis is that you don't quite understand that from the time President Trump wakes up to he goes to bed, there's an effort to destroy his presidency. And I would ask General Mattis to look at the behavior of the politicians in these cities and see if you can find fault with them. It is so fashionable to blame President Trump for every wrong in America. And he can be a handful. And can he do better? Yes. But the problems we have in America today weren't caused by Donald Trump. To General Mattis, I think you're missing something here, my friend. You're missing the fact that the liberal media has taken every event in the last 3.5 years and laid it at the president's feet. I'm not saying he's blameless, but I am saying that you're buying into a narrative that I think is, quite frankly, unfair.
People are not nice to Donald Trump, and I think it's unfair. Sure, he violated the Constitution, but is that really a problem when people are mean to the most powerful person in the world? I want you to think about that, General Mattis. Pathetic.
Yeah, speaking of nicknames, I'm always amused by doo-doo. So Lindsey Graham comes out and says, now remember, that is my precious, precious boo-boo. Anyway, Donald Trump, remember, Trump doxed Lindsey Graham during the primary.
Have some self-respect, Lindsey Graham, just a little bit. God.
He insulted him in the most outrageous ways, and then gave out his phone number and told everybody to call him and call him those stupid names until Lindsey Graham had to change his phone number. Now he's out there licking Donald Trump's boots. Okay. And every day, this servile little pathetic man walks into his office knowing that he got unmanned by Donald Trump, and he thinks, oh, but he's my new master. Ooh, I gotta lick his boots real good. Nobody gonna lick it better than me. That's Lindsey Graham. That's doo-doo over there. So go ahead, lick away, Lindsey. Lick away. You're pathetic. Maybe if you're lucky, he'll find you relevant again to dox you again.
And I just want to note, there were other retired generals who spoke out, including retired Marine Corps General John Allen, who said, the slide of the United States into illiberalism may well have begun on June 1st, 2020. I'd argue a little earlier than that. Remember that date. It may well signal the beginning of the end of the American experiment. And he also said it wasn't enough that peaceful protesters had just been deprived of their First Amendment rights. This photo op sought to legitimize that abuse with a layer of religion. Donald Trump isn't religious, has no need of religion, and doesn't care about the devout, except insofar as they serve his political needs. Damn.
Look at Bunker Boy holding.
He's just so sad.
He's like, "What is this thing? They have given me a book. They say that the humans care about. I will now hold it up as if I also care about this book." You know, I happened to see today the old questions they asked them during the 2016 campaign. Which verse do you like in the Bible the most? And he's like, there. You know, I can't pick a particular.
All of them.
Okay, but my favorite part of that little 30-second exchange was they said, are you an Old Testament or a New Testament guy? I mean, the easiest question. Jesus is in the New Testament. Look, everyone knows the answer to that question. You don't have to be Christian, right? And or if you're like, hey, eye for an eye, maybe you say Old Testament, even though I love Jesus, etc., right? And he's like, well, I tell you, both. He's never read a word. He's never read a word of it, okay? And so in this case, the generals are right. And look, guys, we're not overly deferential to the generals. We're not MSNBC. We don't think they're always right. In fact, I'd be shocked if I didn't disagree with Jim Mattis on 90% of issues. And I know he's way too much of a war hawk and interventionist, etc. But even the right-wing generals are saying, watch out, watch out. We might even have a coup. For God's sake, not this guy, anybody but this guy.
Exactly. All right, well, we got to take a break. Let's do that. And when we come back, I'll let you know why I think, maybe Cenk disagrees with me, the New York Times is trash. We'll be right back.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing. But what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're going to fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single-payer health care, debt-free college, and we are going to get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're going to do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a betting. Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Guys, not a big deal, but you're about to save the planet. So here's how it works. We're planting 10 trees for everyone who signs up at aspiration.com/TYT. Aspiration and TYT are doing this together. Do you have any idea what 10 trees do? Hold on, let me explain. First of all, one tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. I plant 10 trees, or you plant 10 trees by going to aspiration.com/TYT. That's 40 people. You're giving oxygen to 40 people. What are you gonna argue with that? You can't argue with that. But if you do, during 1 year, a mature tree will absorb more than 48 pounds of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and release oxygen in exchange. We capture the carbon dioxide, release the oxygen. Aspiration.com/TYT. You save money and you save the planet. What else do you want to do? Come on, aspiration.com/TYT. All right, not only that, you can plant a tree with every purchase once you're in Aspiration and you have an account. There's no way this is going to get better. Oh my God, no deposits used for oil drills or pipelines. Oh my God, up to 10% cash back for socially conscious shopping. Hello. With Aspiration Spend and Save, you get the world's first cashback account that lets you track the impact of your spending, all managed through what an intuitive app. Would a hero sign up for Aspiration through aspiration.com/TYT? I guess.
So this is what democracy looks like.
We have to be aggressive, we have to be powerful, we have to go hard, and we have to go for what is ours because they are not going to give it to us.
The system is flawed. I mean, the primary system is archaic, stupid, made up.
If you think that accomplishing a leftist movement here is going to be easy, you're wrong. We have to fight.
It has begun.
The powerful do not give up their power easily.
No.
2020 is everything.
All right, back at the Young Turks, Jake Ugranics, Barry at TYT here. So Time to go to the members, tyt.com/join. You make our show possible. If you're watching on YouTube, you can hit the join button down below. Facebook, there's also some sort of button there to become a member on Facebook. Anyway, Maui Greg says, things have gotten so bad that just a mere sight of Anna and Cenk put me at ease. I've never been more thankful for TYT. Well, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you. And you made me want to go to Maui. Now there's so many others here. Oh, Lieutenant Mick G writes in, yes, I served 10 plus years in the Army to protect the American people, not oppress them. And unlike some of these generals, even as a captain, I had the personal courage to disobey an illegal order, which is legal according to the UCMJ. That is absolutely right. And they should all do that. In fact, Gabby Marita chimes in and says, I've been texting with my father, a retired United States Air Force colonel, a lot in the past few weeks, and he's repeatedly reminded me that military officers are bound by regulations to refuse to carry out an illegal order. Yes, that's true until they're fired and then replaced by someone else, and then they're fired and then replaced by someone else until Trump finds the military leader he wants. Anyway, Breathe Rima says, OMG, I love you, Anna. That was amazing. Spot on. Okay. Saying it that way for emphasis. A lot of people agree with that. Lauren MW on YouTube Super Chat says, Anna, you are a goddess. Thank you for being you. Okay.
Thank you.
It's a little bit too far, but that's all right.
I actually agree with that, but thank you. It's a sweet comment.
Jorge Fontan writes in, Jamal Bowman is going to buy Elliot Engel a one-way ticket to wherever AOC sends Joe Crowley. Yes! Okay. BowmanForCongress.com. Jamal Bowman is awesome. Oh man, if that happens, I'm going to be so excited. And by the way, the ticket is to K Street. Joe Crowley is now a lobbyist. And then Jonathan G says, she knows in Turkish grandmother voice. He wrote in bracket. And last one, Chio Maria, also on YouTube Super Chat. We love every one of you guys. Says, you guys are the light at the end of the tunnel. Love you guys. Okay, tyt.com/go. Let me see the thermometer. Did you guys know I wore the number 42 when I played football in high school? Okay, so I'm not saying we got to get to 42,000 by the end of the show. I'm just saying that would be awesome and amazing. 41,063. Can I see 42,000? Let's go hit somebody. tyt.com/go. All right, much love. Anna, you're up.
All right. The New York Times is catching some heat for its decision to publish an op-ed written by a fascist, Senator Tom Cotton, who believes in using the military against American citizens practicing their First Amendment right and peacefully protesting. So he had shared his thoughts on using the military before during an interview with Fox News. Immediately after that, Donald Trump actually did use the military against peaceful protesters in Washington, D.C. to clear the way for his ridiculous photo op where he demonstrated to the world where he doesn't even know how to hold a Bible. Well, now Tom Cotton is doubling down on this in an op-ed that should not have been published by the New York Times. He writes, bands of looters roved the streets, smashing and emptying hundreds of businesses. Some even drove exotic cars. The riots were carnivals for the thrill-seeking rich, as well as other criminal elements. Some elites have accused this orgy of violence in the spirit of radical chic, calling it an understandable response to the wrongful death of George Floyd. Those excuses are built on a revolting moral equivalence of rioters and looters to peaceful, law-abiding protesters. Let me just stop for a second. The main takeaway from what Senator Cotton is saying here is, I'm going to go ahead and conflate the rioting and the people engaging in violence to the peaceful protesters. Because the protesters who were attacked in D.C. were not breaking any laws. They were not rioting. They were not looting. They weren't even breaking curfew. And they were met with such viciousness and such violence. And that was a constitutional violation, right? And that is what Tom Cotton is calling for. He wants more of that. He also says one thing above all else will restore order to our streets. An overwhelming show of force to disperse detain, and ultimately deter lawbreakers. But local law enforcement in some cities desperately needs backup, while delusional politicians in other cities refuse to do what's necessary to uphold the rule of law. Let me also just note one thing. Cops would not have a problem keeping peaceful protesters safe if they actually had an interest in keeping the peaceful protesters safe while focusing on rooting out any type of looting or violence that they might come across, right? But the issue here is that they have focused most of their energies on the peaceful protesters. Look at the number of arrests, and then look at the ratio of peaceful protesters who got arrested because they broke curfew versus the number of arrests of people who are actually looting or doing anything violent. They're focusing on the wrong thing, and I don't think that's a mistake. And Tom Cotton wants the cops to continue doing that, and he wants more military action to further punish these people for having the audacity to call out police brutality that has killed countless unarmed Black people in this country.
Yeah. Well, now a debate has started as to whether the New York Times should have published that in the first place. And so I think probably Anna and I are going to disagree about this one. But Anna, do we have a poll on this? And do we have the other New York Times writers disagreeing first so that people have the context? Because I want to do two things at once. I want to heavily criticize Tom Cotton and probably in this case defend the New York Times. So you go ahead first, Anna.
Well, first, let me give you the reactions from people who actually work at the New York Times, because they did speak out against this. In fact, I'm going to give you some statements. Here's one of the writers for the New York Times. She's won awards for her reporting, and she writes, "I'd probably get in trouble for this, but to not say something would be immoral. As a Black woman, as a journalist, as an American, I'm deeply ashamed that we ran this." The Times opinion editor, Jen Parker, also disagreed with the decision to publish Cotton's op-ed, saying, "Running this puts all Black people in danger, including New York Times staff members." And let me read one more. One other person writes, "Surreal and horrifying to wake up on the morning of June 4th, the 31st anniversary of Tiananmen Square crackdown, to this headline." So Amy's actually a reporter who focuses on current events in Asia. So, hearing from her was important here. And by the way, these are not the only people who work at the New York Times who spoke out. There were countless tweets, and they all said negative things toward the New York Times for their decision to publish this. Now, here's our poll. We want you guys to take part in it. You can take this poll by going to tyt.com/polls/cotton. And the question is, should the New York Times have published this op-ed? Very simple options here, either yes or no. Again, go to tyt.com/polls/cotton.
Okay, so look, so do I agree with Tom Cotton? Not 1%. Can't stand it. I think that he's a very dangerous guy. He's a rare combination of a neocon and a Trump-like nationalist at the same time. Usually those are two terrible, different camps in the Republican Party, but Tom Cotton has found a way to join them. And there isn't a war that Tom Cotton wouldn't start. He's new Lindsey Graham in that sense, but also a nationalist. And so this op-ed is not at all surprising. It's loaded up with at a minimum, racist dog whistles like an orgy of violence. It almost feels like that book that the Steve Bannon crew loves so much, Camp of the Saints, where they refer to orgies and violence from immigrants, etc. He says we should do a show of force. Well, isn't that what the protests are about in the first place? Too much show of force by the police? And his answer is give more of that. Give more of the hatred and the ugliness that is in America. So I don't want anyone getting a misimpression I'm defending Tom Cotton 1%. Having said that, he's a United States Senator, and I mean, you can't make him like, so what, the New York Times is not supposed to cover Republicans? If I had
Cenk.
to make that call, if I'm the New York Times, I probably run it because it's on the record. I mean, there's an op-ed of him saying all those terrible, ugly things. So
he has already said those terrible, ugly things on the record. I mean, he's said it on Twitter, on his own page. He's said it in interviews with Fox News. There's already a record of who Tom Cotton is and how he believes that the military should be used against its own people. There are some ideologies that should not be given equal weight to valid opinions, thoughts, concerns. This type of unconstitutional nonsense is incredibly damaging to our democracy. And I just find it laughable that the publishers over at the New York Times think it's totally fine to publish Tom Cotton's fascistic nonsense, but they still have a ban on Noam Chomsky. I mean, just sit with that for a minute, okay? So there was misinformation in his op-ed where he claimed that, there's violence carried out by members of Antifa during these protests. The FBI indicates that that is not true. So is the New York Times comfortable running something that's not only fascistic, but also continues to perpetuate nonsense conspiracy theories about what's going on during these protests? I mean, it's incredible who they give a pass to and who they give the middle finger to. I have no doubt you're banned from the New York Times. How many times have you pitched an op-ed to the New York Times and they gave you the middle finger? You're not valid, Cenk. Your ideas are not valid for the New York Times. Noam Chomsky's ideas are not valid for the editorial board at the New York Times. But Tom Cotton calling for a violation of our constitutional rights, that's totally fine. It's just a valid viewpoint that maybe we should discuss and debate. Not buying it.
No, look, Anna, if you're going to say that New York Times discriminates against progressives, I 100% agree. And they would much rather give an op-ed to a Republican who is in favor of, the military controlling us in a way that is unconstitutional and un-American than to a progressive. They'd much rather, 1,000 times, they'd rather do that, right? And if there's somebody from the New York Times watching, they'll cry and cry over that and go, no way! No, Ted Cruz still calls us liberal. I don't care what Ted Cruz calls you. Okay, and if you have, I'm sure you have Democrats. You have tons and tons of Democrats that work for you, right? But are any of them progressive? I mean, maybe you could find 2 in the building, but you certainly wouldn't let them do op-eds. So I'm not disagreeing with that. But if New York Times gets in, I want them to be more open-minded, not less open-minded. If they get in the business of censoring ahead of time what the op-eds are, well, I guarantee you, first people are going to happily censor immediately is any progressive. They're going to say, well, that's not within established thought. That's not allowed. Other people are offended by it, etc., and they're going to ban it. Tom Cotton exists in the world. He's a U.S. senator. And so I don't mind people hearing what he has to say. They're going to hear it anyway. So what difference does it make if it's said on Fox News or published in the New York Times? I don't find the New York Times to be any more sacrosanct. And I don't want to get in the business of policing that. Let them run any op-ed they want, and then we react and we say Tom Cotton's a monster. And on him, look here, I'm saying, look, and I want to be clear. I'm granting to you that the New York Times does not do this in a fair or just way. If I propose an op-ed calling Tom Cotton un-American, which he literally is, he is against the American principles, which is we do not have the military policing in our country. It's a core principle of ours. They would never allow it, never. But they serve power, and so Tom Cotton is in power, progressives are not, and New York Times thinks, well, I'm going to give you some of Joe Biden, and I'm going to give you some of Tom Cotton.
Why did we have such a huge problem with CNN hosting debates with a climate scientist and a climate denier? Because it made it appear as though both parties were on equal footing, that they both had valid perspectives. And Tom Cotton does not have a valid perspective. He has, it's just not a valid perspective. You can't use the military against peaceful protesters, which is exactly what Donald Trump did. He wants more of that. Tom Cotton wants more of that. I mean, you have former military generals. You have Donald Trump's former defense secretary speaking out and calling it unconstitutional. But for the New York Times, no, totally valid opinion. Let's definitely run it. Not a problem.
So let me make one more important note. They can fact check, and they are supposed to fact check with an op-ed. And so they should not have let him say that about Antifa when it's has not been proven. And as you point out, our former colleague Ken Klippenstein got a memo from the FBI showing that they do not think Antifa was involved. But other than that, and I know what bothers you. You're not going to get me to defend Tom Cotton at all. Anything he says, I can't stand the guy. But is it a valid opinion? I don't know. It's the opinion of the President of the United States and most of the Republican senators. So once New York Times gets into the business of judging valid opinions, guaranteed the first opinion they ban is progressive opinion. Guaranteed.
Then their journalism it's worthless. It's worthless. The whole point of journalism is to fight back against these type of undemocratic ideologies and to hold people in positions of power accountable. It's to speak truth to power. That's the whole point of journalism. If you're simply just going to provide a platform for someone to share these unconstitutional, undemocratic points of view, then there's really no point to your publication. I mean, I think it cancels out good reporting that's done at the New York Times. Like, how are you going to trust people who work there when they're totally okay with publishing this kind of crap? And I'm not talking about the staff writers. I'm not talking about the reporters. I'm talking about the people who have actual power within that publication, right? So look, we disagree. The audience gets to vote on this and tell us what you think. Please take part in that poll. But for now, we got to take a quick break. We'll be back with more in just a minute.
All right, guys, time to do more donor shout out. Thank you to everybody who donated. By the way, if you give 127 or more, you get this awesome t-shirt. We press on. Damn, that looks good. And not just on me. Okay, so tyt.com/go to do that. All right, shout outs today. Perry Savage from Texas gave $50. Thank you, Perry. Dorothy Poppin from South Carolina gave $15. Brian Bland from Idaho gave $15. Bette McLaughlin from Kansas gave $27. But we got more. Brenda Runebaum gave $4 and shared this story. I'm on the Kansas side of the Kansas City metro area. I don't remember exactly when I found TYT, probably within the last year or so, prior to becoming a member. After seeing Bernie and AOC in person at my first political rally, which was for Brent Welder. I wasn't a mainstream media political watcher before. However, I really enjoy watching now that I've found progressive independent media because it fits with my ideals. I was originally watching on the Roku channel, then moved to YouTube when the quarantine changed everything. I loved every part of that story, and thank you for giving the $4. Every dollar matters, and thank you for sending in the story. Now let's go to James Backner from Israel, who gave $50, and he said, I've watched with great concern as socialist policies have been replaced by rapacious neoliberal policies in both the United States and Israel. In addition, Trump and Netanyahu are existential threats to democracy. Because the corporate media ignores or distorts the news about what is happening, I have turned to alternative news sources like TYT. I most enjoy the damage report. John does an excellent job. The conversation is also excellent. I regularly listen to the main show, but wish that the percentage of chit-chat would decrease so we can get more news reports. I love every part of that. Look, some people love the chit-chat, some people don't, but I appreciate you sharing your feedback because as you can tell, we do this show together, even if it's $4 at a time. tyt.com/go. Love you guys.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea, that truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it, and for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Cenk! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
Cool news, shopdyt.com now has books. There's a whole bunch of books there. You're going to be shocked to find out that they're largely progressive. Of course! Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People, is there. It's fantastic. It's a story from Jesse Jackson to Bernie Sanders to AOC that explains the progressive movement probably better than any book I've ever read. Speaking of awesome books, my dad's got a book out called The Original Young Turk, where he goes from the poorest olive farmer you ever met in your life to living the American dream. All right, back on the Young Turks, Jake and Anna with you guys. Tonight, we've got another episode of Between Me and Uyghur on our Twitch channel. Yes, we've got a Twitch channel now, twitch.tv/TYT. John Sally's going to be on. How's that for fun? NBA legend, multiple champion, and very provocative, thoughtful, and thought-provoking guest. So John Sally on Twitch tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Check that out. Okay, a bunch of guys wrote in. Fine, you all agree with Anna, whatever. Smooth writes in.
Take your time.
Op-ed sections are often crap. I don't take New York Times staff members that seriously. They never clap back against third-way neoliberal nonsense in that section. Those policies have disproportionately hurt people of color a great deal for decades. Fair enough. Megan E. with an excellent point. As I said at the start of this, if the New York Times actually did share all sides and all beliefs, there might be an argument to defending this. They don't. They pick and choose, and they pick this. There is no defense. Luana says probably the only upshot of the New York Times running it is that he will also be voted out when up for re-election. I wish that were true, but that is not anywhere near true. He, in fact, he's up for re-election now, and he is running unopposed. That's how great the Democrats are. Way to go, Democratic Party. Unopposed. That guy. Okay, YouTube Super Chat real quick. Ben Bale says, I'm loving Anna's impressions this evening. Keep up the great work. I'm in the UK, and I trust your reporting of everything going on. Thank you. Dark Energy 17 says, you're doing great work. Appreciate you all. And Fix writes in, you TYT guys are smashing it tonight, as always. I love the UK audience. Thank you, guys. Thank you for using YouTube Super Chat or for donating at tyt.com/go. All right, Casper.
All right. Our former colleague, Ken Klippenstein, continues breaking the good stories. In fact, he just recently broke a story for The Nation about how there is absolutely no FBI intelligence indicating that Antifa is causing violence during these mass protests that we're seeing throughout the country. In fact, someone who works for the FBI leaked an internal document to Ken Klippenstein, and here's what it had to say. Based on CHS, that's confidential human source canvassing, open source / social media partner engagement and liaison, FBI WFO has no intelligence indicating Antifa involvement / presence. Also, the report did warn that individuals from a far-right social media group had called for far-right provocateurs to attack federal agents, use automatic weapons against protesters. So in order to protect that FBI investigation, Ken Klippenstein did not give the identity of this far-right group, but I do think it's important to tell you what the details are, what the intelligence community is gathering on the ground as these protests happen. And don't fall for like the outside agitators narrative. I think that it's, purposely being done to distract from the real message, the important message from these protesters, which is, defunding the police ending this nonstop brutality and really reforming this system of, systemic racism that has gone on for far too long. That's what this protest is about. End of story. But, the reputable journalists over at Project Veritas would have you believe otherwise. I'm being sarcastic when I say reputable. This is the organization that's tied to James O'Keefe. He has been arrested way too many times for me to even remember. He's the one who put out those false videos claiming that Planned Parenthood was selling baby parts. Just complete nonsense. And then he puts out the video that you're about to watch, which, to be fair, most people realize it's BS, but there have been right-wing news outlets who have published it, which blows your mind because once you see like the first frame of this video, you should just start cracking up. Take a look.
Been undercover with Rose City Antifa since July of 2000. Depending on the setting, if I were to be caught or found out in a setting where I am present with them, it could escalate to violence against me.
Don't be that f***ing guy with the goddamn spiked brass knuckles getting photos taken of you. Police are going to be like, perfect, we can prosecute these f***ers. Look how violent they are. Right? Not that we're not, but we need to f***ing hide them.
So currently I am a prospect for Rose City Antifa, and I am about halfway through the prospecting process to become a full-fledged member of Antifa.
Rose City Antifa holds required lectures for prospecting members in secret at In Other Words bookstore before they open. And as part of their security culture, they require us to put our phones in the bathroom and next door.
The whole goal of this, right, is to get out there and do dangerous things as safely as possible.
How violent is Antifa or RCA in particular?
Practice things like an eye gouge. It takes very little pressure to injure someone's eyes.
They do not hesitate to either push back or incite some kind of violence. With RCA, it seems much more structured, almost like a company or like a business. So, I feel like there is some type of outside funding, influence, or resources being used.
Okay, that was laughable. At one point, if you notice, there's a date on some of the footage, and it says February 25th, which is a curious time to plan, this infiltration of these mass protests, right? That's a little weird. And also that bookstore that they referenced is a bookstore in Portland, Oregon that has been closed since 2018. That meeting place for all these members of Antifa who are plotting to infiltrate these protests and cause a ruckus. Yeah, it's been closed for 2 years. No, yeah, 2 years. It's just, they're so sloppy in how they do this. It's amazing.
Yeah. Fox News ran it without questioning it at all on their website. Undercover journalism by Project Veritas exposing Antifa. I mean, we don't have any journalists in the building to verify any of this. So we were taking their word for it. And you could tell because they have compelling video of a closed bookstore where they had a meeting at a bookstore. And okay, and then they made us put our cell phones in the bathroom because they thought somebody might sneak in a cell phone like I did. Okay, but what my favorite is the videos. There's nothing that's clear at all from the videos. They put a guy's picture on it, but the guy's not actually in the video. And we can't tell. You certainly can't confirm that he's in the video, right? But every other shot looks like it's like everybody's a quarter of somebody's face. It mainly looked like Blair Witch Project Part 2, right?
Look at the hoodie guy. Just look at the hoodie guy with the sunglasses. Like, it's a joke. It's just a joke. Like, the fact that anyone would take this seriously and associate themselves with promoting this. Like, are you not embarrassed? Do you not have any self-respect? Just a little bit of self-respect. How embarrassing is this? The hoodie guy, guys. The hoodie guy. The hoodie guy. I can't get over
He
it.
looks so comical. He really does. A Ghostbuster that got stuck in the wrong place. Okay, I'm scared. I'm so scared. Okay, anyways, all right, we gotta go, guys. We have a giant post game for you guys. tyt.com/join. We'll see you there. All right, back at the Young Turks. Check it out with you. What's up?
Well, one of our members yesterday wanted an update on what's been going on in Hong Kong. You guys ask, we deliver. Now, I know a lot of you want us to cover all sorts of stories that we don't get to in the rundown, but I'm doing my best. So I actually think that there's a pretty important update on what's happening in Hong Kong. So let's talk about it right now. So Hong Kong, unfortunately, just passed a bill that deems any disrespect toward China's national anthem a criminal act. And this is yet another attempt to encroach on Hong Kong's semi-autonomous status. There are two types of politicians in Hong Kong: the pro-democracy politicians who want to resist the provocations of China and the encroachment of China as much as possible. And then there are the pro-China establishment politicians who pushed for this type of bill. Now, the national anthem bill orders that primary and secondary school students in Hong Kong be taught to sing the March of the Volunteers, that is the national anthem for China, along with its history and etiquette. And if there is any disrespect toward the Chinese national anthem, penalties can include up to 3 years in jail, as well as a fine of up to $6,400. Now, the Chinese anthem has been booed recently during soccer matches, for instance, and, you know, people are getting very hurt about that. So they need to pass laws to punish people who, you know, might hurt their feelings. And so what some of these protesters will do is they'll start singing "Glory to Hong Kong" instead as a rallying cry. The move comes just days after Chinese authorities gave the green light to move ahead with a national security law, which the United States, Britain, Australia, and Canada, as well as international human rights groups, say will erode freedoms in the global financial hub. I just think it's hilarious that the United States, especially at this moment in time, has like any leg to stand on when it comes to violating the rights of anyone in any place in this world, right? Like, it's just, the Trump administration is a joke, especially considering how they've been treating peaceful protesters in our own country. But what I love about this story is how the pro-democracy politicians reacted to this bill, and you're about to see it in this next video.
Hong Kong's Legislative Council, there were chaotic scenes as pro-democracy councillors threw liquid to delay a vote on a controversial national anthem bill.
What we did today is to remind the world that we should never forgive the Chinese Communist Party for killing its own people 31 years ago.
So that was a reference to the 31st anniversary of the of what happened in Tiananmen Square. So I should also note that for the first time, China is not allowing a vigil to mark the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. And they're saying that it's because of coronavirus. Others think, no, that's not the case. They're doing it because this is what China does.
So they threw a stink bomb, and they said because it was the foul stench of this law and the Chinese tyrannical government that it would bring with it. Okay, that's interesting.
No, I'm all for it. I love it. I love the resistance. Like, it wasn't just the stink bomb. It was the commentary, the speeches, the arguments by the those protesting this bill. And I just wish we had that kind of strength, in the Democratic Party. But anyway, keep going.
I'll tell a fun story about a stink bomb that I was kind of involved with when I was in elementary school for the members. This is part of the post game, but members get these videos first, and they'll get a little extra like that fun story. tyt.com/join to become a member. But now back to important stuff. So the U.S. says this is outrageous. How can China demand that their national anthem be respected? And by the way, of course, Colin Kaepernick should be banned from the NFL. Oops. I wonder if Drew Brees liked this new law from the Chinese in Hong Kong. Seriously, Anna's right. We have no leg to stand on. Tom Cotton literally talked about how the Chinese were so terrible in Hong Kong against protesters. And he said, I can't believe they used the military against them. And now he publishes an op-ed in the New York Times saying we should use the military against our own citizens. And, there's the same right wing that has been saying for years now that Colin Kaepernick is an enemy of the state for taking a knee during the national anthem. They found that to be the most outrageous crime there is. Now, when the Chinese say, yeah, okay, then we'll make it a crime to disrespect the national anthem in Hong Kong. And they're like, how could they? It's an outrage against liberty. Consistency not required.
Yeah. Okay, well, there is one person who's consistent in being terrible, and that's Candace Owens. So let's talk a little bit about her.
Before we get to Candace Owens, so I promised the stink bomb story. So we interrupt the news for this fun little side story. I guess I was a bit of a troublemaker all the way back in elementary school. I know that comes as a big shock to you guys, but I don't. No, yeah, that's true. No, definitely true. Yep. Going through my memory, like, was I really a troublemaker all the way back then? I was like, yeah, that's right, I was. Anyway,
you went to a protest. What was the name of that little boy from Cuba?
Elian Gonzalez.
Yeah, you went to Elian Gonzalez protest full of Cubans to share a message counter to what they were protesting. Like, you went there purposely to provoke them, Cenk. Yeah, you were a troublemaker for sure.
Yeah, it just said send Elian home. Who knew that they weren't going to like that message? Okay, but that was, of course, when I was growing up in Miami. But this was all the way back in elementary school. And so somebody threw a stink bomb. Back in the day, that was like a thing. People threw stink bombs on a fairly regular basis, right? And the whole classroom smelled so badly. It was right at the end of the day, and the teacher got really mad, and she said, "That's it. I'm not letting anyone go. You're not allowed to go home until somebody confesses." Okay? And the entire class was like, "Cenk, just say you did it. We all know you did it. Just say you did it. Let's move. We gotta go home. We're gonna miss the bus. What are you doing?" And I'm like, the chance of me admitting to something I didn't do is less than zero. I'll stay here all day. I'll stay here all week. I don't care, but I didn't do it, and I ain't gonna say I did it. And finally, after, I don't know, it's the memory from so long ago, but I think we stayed there about half an hour, which for fifth graders or sixth graders, whatever we were, is interminable, right? And finally, Angela Muccioli said, "Fine, I did it." And what a great Jersey name, right? Angelo Mutarelli.
Wait, a girl did it? A little troublemaker female?
No, Angelo.
Oh, Angelo. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I was feeling a little proud there for a minute.
No, but
my fellow females.
Yeah, they were also troublemakers. They were on the other side. They were the Black Dogs. It was led by Frank Niglio, Angelo Mutarelli, and Dave Smella. Can you tell I grew up in Jersey?
Definitely. Yeah.
All right, but they do get confessions out of people by putting pressure on them. Don't concede if you didn't do it. All right, anyways, speaking of fun, let's go to Candace Owens.
Not fun, but we'll talk about it anyway. So Candace Owens was reminded by the people who pay her that now's the time for her to come out and say terrible things against Black people. And that's exactly what she did in reference to George Floyd. This video was just so disgusting, and I hated that I needed to watch it. And I hate that I'm sharing part of it with you now, but I think it's important to understand how easily people can be corrupted into saying this type of disgusting nonsense. So go ahead and watch.
I want to come out and say that I do not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America. Shelby Steele said that the Black community is unique from other communities. Our culture is unique from other communities because we are the only community that caters to the bottom denominator of our society. Now let me explain what that means. It means to say that not every Black American is a criminal, not every Black American is committing crimes, but we are unique in that we are the only people that fight and scream and demand support and justice for the people in our community that are up to no good. You would be hard-pressed to find a Jewish person who has spent 5 stints in prison, who commits a crime and dies while committing a crime, and that the Jewish people champion and demand justice for. You will be hard-pressed to find this in white America. You'll be hard-pressed to find this even in Latino America.
I'm actually not hard-pressed at all. George Zimmerman was made to be a hero because he murdered a 17-year-old, a teenager. Donald Trump is celebrated by white Americans every single day, and he is literally a criminal. He's defrauded students. He's broken, he's used the office of the presidency to enrich himself, which is a violation of the Constitution's emoluments clause. I mean, this guy is a criminal, an incompetent one at that, through and through, and he gets celebrated all the time by white Americans. So what is she talking about? It's absolute nonsense. And what we're talking about here right now, we're not celebrating criminality, okay? What protesters are asking for right now, and it should be a simple ask. Stop murdering people. Cops should not be the jury, the judge, and the executioner. We should not be supporting extrajudicial murder, killings out on the streets, which is what she's helping to support right now. Garbage. She's just garbage. I can't stand this woman.
Yeah. So to me, the more interesting thing is the phenomenon of what right-wing wealthy patrons are willing to support and want to support. It's not just that they get a Black person to attack other Black people, and this is done not just in the case of African Americans, but across all the different ethnicities. So if you see a person on Fox News who's Muslim,
they're almost definitely going to attack other Muslims. And so it's true of Latinos, it's true of women that they bring on, but it goes further than that. And this is a great example of it. It's not just that blacks and Muslims and women, et cetera, are all wrong. It's that they are uniquely wrong. So they bring on Muslims to say that Muslim culture is unique, the Muslim religion is unique, and they'll bring on atheists to say, oh, no, none of the religions are true, but Islam is the worst of the worst. Why? Because the idea is Islam is irredeemable. It is uniquely bad. Why? It gives you a reason to hate those people and justify your hatred. And it gives you a reason to oppress them, to occupy them, etc. In the case of African Americans, if you notice, what she just said was that blacks are unique in this. They're the only people who defend so-called criminals in their midst. But all the other people are wonderful. Whites are wonderful, Jews are wonderful, maybe even Latinos, okay?
That part was amazing, by the way. Like, you know, even Latinos kind of maybe. I hate them. I think they're terrible, but that part was just...
Anna? That was her going, I forgot if Boss Man told me to hate Latinos too. I know my main job here is to say blacks are uniquely bad, right? So Boss Man, I know you hate Latinos too, but do I put that in this, or you get the Latina to say that? Okay, no problem, Boss Man. Okay, and so I don't care if anybody's going to pretend to get their feelings hurt about it. What we say about Candace Owens, I will laugh and laugh and laugh. Okay, she definitely has a boss man. It's the person who signs her checks, and they pay her to attack her own. That's their whole point. She wasn't even a conservative before. She switched as soon as she started getting the checks, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, black people suck. They're all criminals, and they defend criminals. So look, just real quick, we don't even need to get into it, but I'll do it real super quick. George Floyd, at worst, maybe might have had a counterfeit $20 bill. That was enough reason for execution, so we shouldn't defend him from the people who murdered him. I mean, it's and to Anna's point, I mean, when the minute she said white people don't defend their own criminals, I was screaming, Trump, Trump. I mean, I can go literally take you a half an hour through all the different crimes that he broke. I've gone over the 5 clear crimes 1,000 times, and every time he does one of those crimes, 40% of the white folks in this country jump up, actually a little bit larger than that, and go, no, he's a great criminal. He's our criminal. He's so awesome. I love the way he breaks the laws. Law and order. What? Okay. And even today, Donald Trump clearly implied in a tweet that he was going to pardon Roger Stone, a convicted criminal, that he was going to quite literally bust him out of jail. Okay? White people don't support their own criminals? I mean, what a hilarious joke Candace Owens is. Look, Candace, I hope the house is big enough. I hope the I don't know that you got enough for a yacht, but whatever, you got like a little dinghy, whatever it is, I hope it's big enough, and I hope you're comfortable enough, and I hope you got a nice car out of it, because you're going to live in eternal shame. You're the person who got paid to betray your own. Good luck with that. I hope you can't sleep at night, and I hope that money becomes an albatross around your neck.
Well, let's move on to Drew Brees, who before today I didn't even know existed, but he does, and he said something bad and has apologized. So we'll talk about it now. All right. Okay, everyone relax. Okay, relax. So New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees is apologizing today after he made some insensitive comments about NFL players who kneel during the national anthem. So he made these statements during an interview with Yahoo Finance, which is, pretty interesting subject to discuss for Yahoo Finance, but nonetheless, it happened. And so when asked for his opinion about players kneeling to protest police brutality, once the NFL season begins this fall, Brees said he would, quote, never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag. And then he continued to say, And is everything right with our country right now? No, it's not. We still have a long way to go. But I think what you do by standing there and showing respect to the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity. It shows that we are all in this together. We can all do better and that we are all part of the solution. Now, he received quite a bit of backlash, including from other professional athletes, including LeBron James and Breeze's own teammate, Michael Thomas. So later in an Instagram post, he said the following. He apologized. I would like to apologize to my friends, teammates, the city of New Orleans, the Black community, NFL community, and anyone I hurt with my comments yesterday. In speaking with some of you, it breaks my heart to know the pain I caused. He also admits that he completely missed the mark and that his statement was insensitive. And then he also emphasized that he has, quote, always been an ally, never an enemy to the Black community. But it's hilarious because once he apologized, then there was backlash from right-wingers, including Deanna Lorraine, who's a former GOP challenger to Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
She argues that you should never bend to the mob.
Yeah. All right. And there was a lot of that. Tons of people, right-wing Twitter people saying, "Oh my God, how could you, Drew? You're being wonderfully hateful. Now you're turning around and saying that you like your teammates. Don't do that." And Malcolm Jenkins had a very powerful video about this, who's also a teammate. We're going to ask you a question about this in a second, and I'm very curious what you guys think. But here's my take. First of all, I love Drew Brees as a football player. And so it's painful for me to see this stuff. It reminds me of when we first found out about Bill Cosby. And I was like, no! And so, look, what Drew Brees did is not the same as what Bill Cosby did. I want to be clear about that. And at first I thought that he might have just like really not gotten it. And that he didn't intend harm from it, but didn't understand that, hey, this isn't about the military, this isn't about the flag, this is about police and police brutality. And if you don't think this is the right way to do a protest, is there any form of protest that you would agree to? So I disagreed with him completely, but thought maybe he's coming at it from a decent place. But then JR in our production meeting made such a great point that immediately changed my mind. He said, look, he's been in the locker room with those guys for decades now. Did he never ask Malcolm Jenkins or Michael Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders or anyone to, hey, why are folks taking a knee? Why are they upset? Did they have a single conversation about any of this? Then I saw a picture of him and Donald Trump all smiles in watching a game together. It's amazing to me that you have Black teammates for literally decades, and you call them brothers, and you guys, in your own way, go to battle together. And I can't imagine that you dislike them. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But then you go home and like Tom Brady, put on a Trump hat. Like, and it never occurred to you that it was like you never read it anywhere. You never asked anyone. You didn't that it was about police brutality and not disrespecting the military, and it never occurred to you that police brutality against African Americans was so overwhelming. Every one of them says it. Millions upon millions of African Americans say it, including your brothers who are on the team with you all this time. And it never occurred to you that they might be right, that maybe they're not lying. Maybe this is actually a very benign form of protest and that you should find out more about it. Wow, it's stunning, man. So we got a poll for you guys.
Yeah, so this poll can be found at tyt.com/polls/breeze. We'll also have a link in the description box below. And the poll asks, is Drew Brees intentionally racist, unintentionally racist, negligently racist, or not racist at all? Again, go to tyt.com/polls/breeze.
Yeah, I'm wavering now. I love the phrasing of that poll because I did it, but all right. Yesterday I was sure he was unintentionally racist. I wasn't sure. I thought he was unintentionally racist. Now I'm leaning towards negligently racist, but that's at a minimum, right? but I'm curious what you guys think. That's why we do the polls. But yeah, I just look. I can't stop being stunned by at a bare minimum the deep ignorance of it. And Malcolm Jenkins, his teammate, talked about how, look, my grandparents fought in World War II too, and except when they came back, they weren't honored. They were spit upon.
Right.
And it reminds me of one of the things that flipped me when back, a lot of folks know this. I used to be a Republican when I was younger, and I went and saw a Jesse Jackson speech that got me thinking. And he said that his dad had gone to fight in World War II, and that they had captured a bunch of Nazi soldiers, and his dad had to sit behind the Nazi soldiers in the train because they were black and the Nazis were white.
Yeah.
And so if you never looked into that and you never went to hear a speech from someone you didn't necessarily agree with, and you never bothered to ask a single teammate for decade after decade, it's definitely damning and super.
Yeah. I think that there's just this like misconception about what racism is. Like, I think a lot of people who aren't black think that racism has to be like outwardly malicious. But just like the lack of curiosity to understand what your own teammates are going through, right? Just like the complete apathy and unwillingness to learn from the very people that you're supposed to be like on a team with, working together with, I think is, it's not only, an example of, I guess, if it falls into this category, like negligent racism, it's privilege, because the issues that impact your teammates don't impact you. So subconsciously, I just think that he doesn't think he needs to know about these things or like investigate them a little more before forming an opinion,
Yeah, and that's a great point. And that's why I phrase it as negligently racist, because I think at a bare minimum, it's that, because how do you not care enough about your teammates to ask that question? That's amazing to me that you just don't care. You don't care what they're going through at all. You think, no, I'd rather just protect life as I know it and live in my bubble. And I don't really give a damn about you guys. You seem all concerned about this, but I didn't even bother asking, let alone caring. It's so now, by the way, let's just be clear. He might or might not mean that statement that he put out today, but that was definitely written by his PR agent. No question about it. Okay. I know how that stuff works. PR and lawyers and his agent, they all got in the room together. They wrote that statement. And then Drew was like, either maybe he totally meant it. He's like, thank you for writing it for me. That is what I think. Or he might have thought, what am I going to do? I guess I got to save my career. That's really hard to know.
Well, let's wrap this post game up with one of my favorite stories, yet another addition to the Little Bitch series. And Bunker Boy's at it again. So Bunker Boy Trump cannot ease his nerves when it comes to people protesting near the White House. And so he's putting up all sorts of barriers. Like, he doesn't want to go back to the underground bunker because people have been clowning him so much. So now he's just turning the entire White House into a bunker. So if you look at the video right next to me, you'll see some of the fencing that's being put up. So in addition to the new fencing, which now extends past the EEOB down 17th Street, there's additional concrete barriers that have been installed behind existing fencing at 17th and Pennsylvania Avenue. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Like, he's a little bitch ass. I'm sorry. Like, I just don't know what else to say. Like, I know that I've become very repetitive in these stories, but it just cannot be said enough. Like, how much of a coward Donald Trump is, because he talks big, like he makes himself out to be this tough guy, but just like any bully, like inside he's deeply insecure. He knows how much of a failure he really is. He knows that he doesn't actually project strength, that he is swimming in his own weaknesses. And now there are visuals to like show you what his inner thought process really is. And the visuals include concrete barriers and fences because he cannot connect with people he's supposed to represent. He cannot speak to them. He can't calm their nerves or ease the burdens that they've been facing in this country for a very long time. The only thing he can do is run and hide like a little bitch. It's just amazing.
So he did that big walk across Lafayette Park the other day to show how tough he was, because people were calling him Bunker Boy. One of my favorite things ever was in the Fox interview when he was like, well, I wasn't hiding in the bunker. I was there to inspect it. Really, in the middle of massive protests in front of the White House, you coincidentally went to go inspect the bunker. Is that part of the job description for Commander-in-Chief? Every once in a while, you go, is the bunker okay? I know, like, we've got janitors and we got Secret Service and stuff, but I just want to come in and inspect it real quick. Hilarious. You're a joke, okay? So he then tear gasses innocent civilians and peaceful protesters to show how tough he is. Then as soon as he comes back in the White House, he's like, build a wall, build a fence, I'm so scared, build a fence. So, and conservatives, well, he didn't build a wall for you. You guys wanted him to build a wall to keep out brown people, and he couldn't get it done. But the minute he felt a little in danger, boom, he's got a wall. He's got a wall right around himself. When it's his ass on the line, all of a sudden, he can build walls. Okay? So, and finally, you know how he said with the wall, oh yeah, I'm going to make Mexico pay for it. I was thinking, who's he going to make pay for this? And then I thought, well, the opponents, right, Democrats. Oh no, Democrats probably did pay for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the money came from. At this point, I don't care. What I love is that it's just abundantly clear that he's nothing more than a coward, and the very characteristics that his supporters thought they loved about him don't even exist. The strong man, pro-America, I'm going to make America great again, that it doesn't exist. He's a loser. And all the people who have been supporting him have been supporting a failing loser.
So one more point about the Democrats and Trump. So I said that partly because the Democrats have authorized almost every single thing that Trump wanted, including the defense bill. They're like, oh, you want more money than even the Pentagon wants? Sure, yeah, we'll give you everything, right? And so that probably came out of that budget at some point. And at this point, are the Democrats saying, hey, wait, if you use the military inside the United States of America, we'll defund it? Of course they're not saying that. Are you kidding me? Do you have any idea how quickly Raytheon and Lockheed Martin would fire those Democrats, i.e. not give them their campaign donations anymore? We'll let Trump build any fence he likes. So let's just keep it real on the Democrats. Okay, now on to Trump, or back to Trump. Guys, could you imagine if we had a real leader and in the midst of protests against him, he went out and didn't tear gas people, but spoke to them? Not in the Rose Garden, not behind his little fence, not in his bunker that he's inspecting, but he went out in front of the crowd and gave a speech. Wouldn't that be amazing? Now, wouldn't that be actual courage? Even if you're a right-winger, don't you think like, oh yeah, I mean, tough guys, I would do it. I'm a tough guy. I'd tell the protesters, even if I disagreed with them, right? Any chance that Trump would do that? No chance at all. He would wet himself. And so, it depends on whether he's prepared for that or not. But I do know he's got no interest in going outside his bunker. And he would be a mess if he had to meet one person who disagreed with him, let alone a crowd. That's who he is.
Definitely. Yeah. All right. That's what we have for you today. Fun show.
Indeed. Turned out to be a little bit of fun. Okay. All right, guys.
I like arguing with you. It's fun. I love a good debate, so I'm glad that happened.
Yeah, and then you conveniently take the lib position, and then you get the whole crowd behind you, and then you take like a little jog around the stadium like yeah, sure. Take the easy way out, no problem. But I'm not in a bunker, Anna. I'm out there in the streets.
You're very brave.
All right. Anyway, we love you guys. We got a power panel tomorrow, I think. So we'll see you there. Oh, hold. Don't forget, for all of you who are watching live, tonight in 25 minutes at 8 o'clock Eastern, between me and Uger, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, that's today, John Sally, NBA legend John Sally on the show. So you'll enjoy that. All right. Twitch.tv/TYT. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.